Factories once symbolized the heartbeat of America's Rust Belt, pumping life into the cities and towns that depended on them. But when the machines fell silent, something else remained: echoes of the workers. The accidents and the tragedies that these walls witnessed, from abandoned mills to decaying steel plants. These buildings have become hotspots of paranormal activity, where visitors report ghostly figures walking among rusted machinery, unexplained lights flickering in dark corners, and whispers of lives lost long ago. Tonight, we explore 25 of the most haunted factories in the Rust Belt states, where history, horror, and the supernatural collide, where the industrial past refuses to die. The Packard Automotive Plant in Detroit, Michigan, stands today as a sprawling monument to industrial decline and forgotten ambition. Once a bustling hub of car manufacturing, the plant was a symbol of Detroit's rise as the Motor City. Founded in 1903, the Packard Motor Car Company quickly gained fame for producing luxury vehicles with precision engineering and elegant design. For decades, the assembly lines were alive with activity machines clanging, tools rattling, and workers moving with practiced efficiency. At its peak, the plant employed thousands, and the hum of production echoed across the city. Yet, following economic downturns, shifts in the automotive industry, and the eventual closure of the plant in the 1950s, Packard fell into disuse. Over the decades, the plant's massive halls, crumbling walls, and rusting machinery became a decaying industrial labyrinth. Today, the Packard plant is notorious not only for its architectural decay but also for its chilling reputation as one of Detroit's most haunted locations, where shadowy figures, cold drafts, and unexplained footsteps linger in the memories of those who dare to enter. Visitors to the plant often recount encounters with ghostly figures moving among the abandoned assembly lines. Many describe seeing shadows that resemble former worker silhouettes wearing caps, overalls, or factory attire of the early to mid-20th century. These figures are often glimpsed in peripheral vision, appearing to carry out tasks that were routine in life, tightening bolts, inspecting chassis, or walking briskly between machines. Witnesses frequently report that when they turn to face the figures directly, they vanish instantly, leaving only the emptiness of the decaying halls. Some explorers have noted that these apparitions seem to follow the patterns of the old assembly lines, moving in a rhythm that reflects the industrious spirit of a bygone era. The presence of these shadows is often accompanied by a sense of unease, as if the plant itself remembers the countless hours of labor that once defined it. Cold drafts are another hallmark of the Packard plant's haunted reputation. Many visitors describe sudden drops in temperature as they move through the massive, abandoned sections of the building. These chills are not caused by open windows or gaps in the crumbling structure alone. They often appear in the middle of rooms, on upper floors, or along long hallways where no airflow should exist. Some people report that the cold intensifies near specific machinery or offices, suggesting that the plant may harbor concentrated pockets of residual energy from decades of human activity. Witnesses frequently describe a prickling sensation on their skin, an instinctual shiver that seems to respond to the presence of unseen observers. These cold spots often coincide with other unexplained phenomena, such as shadowy movements or the faint sound of machinery that should long be silent. Unexplained footsteps echoing through empty halls are among the most commonly reported experiences. Explorers and urban adventurers often recount hearing the rhythmic pounding of boots or the shuffle of footsteps across metal grates, concrete floors, or staircases. These sounds sometimes appear to follow them as they navigate the plant, starting softly in distant corridors and growing louder as if an invisible worker is keeping pace. The footsteps often stop abruptly when approached, leaving nothing behind except the sound of empty space. Some visitors have reported hearing tools dropping, chairs scraping, or the metallic thud of machinery being operated when no one is present. Combined with the shadowy figures and cold drafts, these auditory experiences create an overwhelming sense that the Packard plant is not entirely abandoned, that the spirit of labor, and perhaps lives long gone, continues to echo through the halls. One memorable account comes from a photographer who explored the plant in the dead of winter. As he walked through an assembly area littered with rusted machinery, he noticed a shadowy figure moving along a row of disused conveyor belts. The figure appeared to inspect the equipment, bending and gesturing as if adjusting components that no longer existed. Suddenly, the photographer felt a rush of icy air, and the figure disappeared into the shadows. Moments later, he heard the unmistakable sound of boots pacing behind him, though no one was visible. The footsteps moved through the space for several minutes, fading only after he exited the main assembly hall. The experience left him with a lasting impression of a presence that was industrious, watchful, and unwilling to be ignored. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the Packard plant due to the consistency and intensity of reported phenomena. Night vision cameras have captured shadowy movements in corridors and assembly areas, while audio devices occasionally record unexplained knocks, metal clanging, and distant footfalls. EMF readings often spike near machinery, offices, and stairwells, suggesting residual energy linked to decades of human labor. While skeptics argue that environmental factors, drafts, and the human imagination can account for some experiences, the sheer volume and specificity of eyewitness accounts lend credence to the plant's haunted reputation. The history of the Packard plant provides context for these spectral manifestations. Workers endured long hours, dangerous machinery, and the pressures of a booming automotive industry, and many spent decades of their lives within these walls. Some died while employed there, and the emotional energy of such dedication and hardship may have left an imprint on the building itself. The combination of massive, enclosed spaces, decaying infrastructure, and historical trauma creates an environment conducive to both natural and paranormal occurrences, blurring the line between the living and the lingering echoes of the past. Visitors to the Packard automotive plant are advised to proceed with caution and respect. The structure is structurally unstable in many areas, with crumbling floors, exposed beams, and rusted machinery presenting real dangers. However, those who explore with care and awareness frequently report encounters that are simultaneously haunting and awe-inspiring. Shadowy figures, cold drafts, and echoing footsteps are not always frightening. They also offer a glimpse into the history and spirit of the workers who once filled the plant with life. The Packard automotive plant in Detroit remains a haunting testament to both industrial achievement and decline. Shadowy figures wandering the halls, sudden cold spots in empty assembly lines, and unexplained footsteps echoing through the ruins create an atmosphere that is chilling, evocative, and impossible to ignore. For those who step into the plant's vast and decaying interior, it is not merely a relic of the past, it is a place where the labor lives and presence of generations endure, whispering through the shadows and reminding the living that some memories refuse to fade. Sloss Furnaces in Birmingham, Alabama, stands as a towering relic of America's industrial past, a sprawling complex of rusted furnaces, towering smokestacks, and miles of interconnected metal walkways. Established in 1882, Sloss was once a bustling iron-producing facility, pivotal to Birmingham's reputation as the Magic City and a cornerstone of the Southern steel industry. Day and night, the furnaces roared to life, glowing with molten iron, while workers labored in intense heat, clad in soot-stained clothing, hauling materials, operating massive machinery, and tending to the fires that kept the furnaces alive. The plant operated for nearly a century before closing in 1971, leaving behind a haunting industrial skeleton. Today the site is preserved as a National Historic Landmark, a museum, and a popular location for tours and educational programs, but beneath its historical significance lies a reputation for paranormal activity that has captured the imagination of both locals and thrill-seekers. Visitors frequently report apparitions of laborers, phantom hammering, and machinery sounds, and flickering lights along the rusted furnaces, creating an atmosphere that is both awe-inspiring and chilling. Witnesses describe figures dressed in the work clothes of the early 20th century, often covered in soot and moving with deliberate purpose along the walkways, catwalks, and furnace floors. These apparitions appear as if still tending to the heavy labor that defined their lives, hauling materials, operating levers, or inspecting furnaces. Many visitors recount seeing these figures in peripheral vision, disappearing when directly approached, leaving only the emptiness of the corroded machinery and the lingering smell of iron. Some explorers claim the figures pause near specific workstations or furnaces, staring intently at areas that seem significant, as though the spirits are bound to the tasks they performed in life. The repeated sightings suggest a strong link between the physical location and the memory of the intense labor that once took place there. Phantom sounds are another defining feature of Sloss Furnace's haunted reputation. Visitors report hearing hammering, the roar of molten metal, clanging machinery, and footsteps echoing through the massive interior spaces even when the site is empty. These sounds are often described as layered, a distant metallic pounding mixed with the hiss of steam, or the rhythmic stomping of boots across metal catwalks. Some report hearing voices calling instructions or shouting warnings, mimicking the communication necessary to operate such a complex and dangerous facility. Audio recordings made by paranormal investigators occasionally capture faint clanging, knocks, or distant industrial noises that have no identifiable source. The combination of auditory phenomena, shadowy figures, and visual anomalies creates a fully immersive and unsettling experience, giving visitors the eerie sense that the furnaces themselves remember the labor, struggle, and dedication of the workers who once populated them. Flickering lights along the rusted furnaces are also frequently reported. Many visitors describe seeing soft glows or sudden bursts of light that appear without explanation, often in areas where the furnaces or catwalks are too corroded or dark to be illuminated naturally. These lights sometimes pulse or move, appearing to trace the outlines of machinery or walkways. Some witnesses interpret them as manifestations of energy left behind by the intense heat, labor, and human presence that once filled the plant. Others suggest that the lights represent spirits attempting to communicate or guide attention to specific areas. Regardless of their origin, the combination of flickering illumination, shadowy figures, and phantom sounds transforms the Sloss Furnaces into a liminal space where past and present seem to intersect. One notable encounter comes from a nighttime tour guide who stayed behind after an evening event. As he walked through the main furnace room, he noticed a figure in soot-stained overalls standing near one of the towering furnaces. The figure appeared to inspect machinery, then raised an arm as if signaling to a coworker. Suddenly, the guide felt a cold rush of air, and the figure vanished, leaving behind a faint metallic scent and the distant echo of hammering. Moments later, lights along the catwalk flickered on and off in rapid succession, casting elongated shadows across the walls. The guide later reported feeling an emotional heaviness, a sense of reverence for those who had labored here, and a lingering awareness that he had been in the presence of something beyond explanation. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to Sloss Furnaces due to the consistency and vividness of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured shadowy forms traversing catwalks and furnace floors, while audio devices occasionally record unexplained metallic clanging and distant footsteps. EMF readings often spike near machinery, furnaces, and workstations, suggesting residual energy tied to the labor of past workers. While skeptics argue that environmental factors, building acoustics, and the imagination can account for some experiences, the detailed accounts and repeated phenomena over decades suggest a more mysterious reality, one that honors the memory of those who once gave their lives to the furnaces. The history of Sloss Furnaces provides context for these hauntings. Workers endured long hours in extreme heat, handling molten iron and heavy machinery, often facing injury or even death. The physical and emotional intensity of their labor likely left an imprint on the building. Combined with the energy of life spent in such a high-stress and dangerous environment, the massive, industrial spaces, echoing metal, and enclosed catwalks create conditions conducive to paranormal phenomena. Whether interpreted as spiritual remnants or atmospheric effects, visitors to Sloss Furnaces are encouraged to proceed with caution and respect, particularly in areas not officially open for tours. While experiences are rarely threatening, shadowy figures, flickering lights, and phantom sounds can be unsettling. Those who explore with care often report a heightened sense of connection to the history and human effort embedded in the site. Sloss Furnaces in Birmingham, Alabama, remains a haunting testament to the city's industrial heritage. Apparitions of laborers, phantom hammering and machinery sounds, and flickering lights along rusted furnaces create an atmosphere that is chilling, evocative, and profoundly moving. For those who step into the complex after dark, it is more than a relic of industry. It's a space where the sweat, toil, and presence of generations of workers endure, echoing through shadows and smoke-stained corridors, reminding the living of lives spent in tireless labor and the spirits that linger still. The Bethlehem Steel Plant in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, is a sprawling industrial complex that once symbolized American manufacturing might. Established in the late 19th century, Bethlehem Steel became one of the nation's largest steel producers, supplying materials that built bridges, skyscrapers, ships, and infrastructure across the United States. At its height, the plant employed tens of thousands of workers who labored around the clock, tending furnaces, operating massive cranes, and transporting molten steel through labyrinthine assembly lines. The sheer scale of the plant, with its towering smokestacks, rusted rail lines, and sprawling warehouses, made it a city unto itself, a place alive with the noise of machinery, the roar of furnaces, and the collective energy of countless workers. After decades of prosperity, the plant's operations declined, and by 1995, Bethlehem Steel had closed, leaving behind an enormous, decaying industrial landscape. Today, while the plant stands silent and abandoned in many sections, it has gained a chilling reputation as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted industrial sites. Witnesses report shadowy figures in hard hats, voices calling across empty cranes, and mysterious clanging that seems to come from nowhere, transforming the former steel giant into a monument of spectral labor. Among the most frequently reported phenomena are sightings of ghostly steelworkers. Visitors recount seeing figures wearing hard hats, overalls, and work boots, moving with purpose across walkways, near furnaces, and along derelict rail lines. These apparitions often appear as if continuing their daily routines, bending over machinery, adjusting levers, or walking briskly along catwalks. Many observers report that these figures vanish when approached, leaving only the emptiness of rusting equipment and the echo of distant footsteps. Some witnesses describe multiple apparitions moving in synchrony, suggesting the lingering presence of crews that once labored together in the immense plant, whether perceived peripherally or directly. These shadowy workers evoke the intense human effort that once filled Bethlehem Steel, creating a bridge between the past and the present. Unexplained sounds are another hallmark of the plant's haunting. Visitors frequently report hearing clanging, banging, and the rumble of machinery long since decommissioned. Echoes of cranes swinging, steel beams striking supports, and distant hammers reverberating through empty halls are common. Some report voices calling instructions, shouting warnings, or murmuring to unseen coworkers. These sounds often appear in areas where no human presence exists, such as deserted warehouses, catwalks, or furnace rooms. Paranormal investigators equipped with audio recorders have documented instances of disembodied knocks and metallic clangs, capturing phenomena that defy natural explanation. The combination of sound in space, the cavernous halls, metal corridors, and high ceilings amplifies the uncanny effect, creating an immersive auditory experience that leaves witnesses unsettled and fascinated. Cold spots and sudden changes in temperature are also frequently reported. Certain areas of the plant, such as abandoned control rooms, furnace floors, and crane towers, are described as unnaturally chilly, even in the heat of summer. Visitors often report feeling a sudden draft, a shiver down the spine, or a creeping sense of unease as they pass through these areas. Some have suggested that these cold spots are linked to residual energy left by the intense labor, stress, and human presence that once permeated the plant. Combined with shadowy figures and unexplained sounds, these environmental anomalies contribute to the overall sense that Bethlehem Steel is more than an abandoned facility. is a space where the energy of the past lingers, waiting to be observed. One particularly vivid encounter comes from a photographer exploring the plant after dusk. Walking along a raised catwalk, he noticed a figure wearing a hard hat moving near a crane platform. The worker appeared to inspect the machinery, bending and gesturing as if adjusting parts that no longer existed. The photographer froze as the figure raised its hand, then vanished into thin air, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and a metallic scent reminiscent of molten steel. Moments later, a distant series of clangs echoed through the empty plant, and lights on the old crane flickered briefly, though no power was running. The photographer later described feeling a strange mixture of fear and reverence, as if he had glimpsed not just a ghost but the enduring spirit of the men and women who once powered Bethlehem Steel. Paranormal investigators have long been drawn to the Bethlehem Steel plant due to the consistency of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured shadowy forms moving across catwalks and along abandoned equipment. EMF meters often register spikes near furnace rooms, crane towers, and control areas. Audio recorders occasionally pick up faint hammering, footsteps, and indistinct voices. While skeptics argue that the plant's large metal structure, natural acoustics, and imagination can account for some experiences, the sheer number, vividness, and specificity of sightings over decades suggests something more mysterious. The plant's haunted reputation is intertwined with its history. Generations of steelworkers endured long hours, extreme temperatures, and dangerous working conditions. Many spent decades within the plant's confines, and some lost their lives on the job. The intense physical and emotional energy required to sustain operations may have left a lasting imprint, contributing to the residual phenomena reported today. The immense scale of the facility, combined with its labyrinthine layout, decaying structures, and historical significance, creates a perfect environment for encounters that blend memory, history, and the unexplained. Visitors to the Bethlehem Steel plant are advised to exercise caution, particularly in areas that are unstable or not maintained. While the reported hauntings are rarely threatening, shadowy figures, mysterious sounds, and flickering lights can be disorienting. Those who explore with care often report a heightened sense of connection to the people who built, maintained, and sustained one of America's most important industrial sites. The Bethlehem Steel plant stands as both a testament to American industry and a haunting reminder of lives dedicated to labor. Shadowy figures in hard hats, phantom voices calling across empty cranes, and inexplicable clanging along rusted machinery transform the plant into a space where history, memory, and the supernatural converge. For those who wander its vast, silent halls, Bethlehem Steel is more than an abandoned industrial site. It's a place where the labor spirit and presence of generations endure, echoing through steel and shadow long after the machines have gone silent. The LTV Steel plant in Cleveland, Ohio, is a monumental relic of America's steel industry. Once a hub of relentless production, heavy machinery, and tireless labor, founded in the early 20th century, the plant played a critical role in providing steel for infrastructure, buildings, and wartime efforts. For decades, the massive complex thrived with the clanging of metal, the roar of furnaces, and the rhythmic hum of assembly lines. Hundreds of workers traversed the expansive halls, operating towering machines, managing molten steel, and performing physically demanding tasks that required precision, endurance, and vigilance. At its height, the plant was a hive of industry, a place where the human spirit and mechanical might intertwine. After the decline of the steel industry in the late 20th century, the plant ceased operations, leaving behind a vast, abandoned labyrinth of catwalks, furnaces, and machinery. Today, the LTV Steel plant is known not just for its historical significance, but for its chilling reputation as a site of paranormal activity. Locals report ghostly laborers moving through empty corridors, machinery turning on by itself, and unexplained cold spots in the immense production halls, suggesting that the energy of the past still lingers in the abandoned steel giant. Visitors frequently report encounters with apparitions resembling former workers. Witnesses describe shadowy figures in work clothes, often covered in soot and dirt, moving deliberately along hallways, conveyor belts, and machine platforms. Some figures appear to be performing tasks long since abandoned, bending over machinery, hauling invisible loads, or gesturing to unseen coworkers. Many observers recount that when they attempt to approach these figures, they vanish instantly, leaving only the emptiness of the plant and the faint metallic scent of iron in the air. Some visitors claim to see multiple apparitions moving in unison, suggesting the lingering presence of teams of workers who once labored together. The recurrence of these sightings over decades highlights a connection between the building's history and the human energy that remains embedded within its walls. Unexplained sounds are another hallmark of the LTV steel plant's haunted reputation. Visitors and urban explorers frequently report hearing clanging, grinding, and hissing that seem to come from machinery long since decommissioned. Footsteps echo along corridors and catwalks where no one is present, and the distant roar of furnaces can sometimes be heard even in areas that have been cold and silent for decades. Voices calling instructions or shouting warnings are also reported, echoing across empty production halls as though the plant itself is reliving its industrial past. Audio recordings by paranormal investigators often capture these sounds, showing bursts of metallic pounding, low rumbles, and the occasional indistinct voice that cannot be attributed to natural sources. The combination of sound, shadow, and space creates an immersive, unsettling experience, making visitors feel as though the plant is not entirely abandoned, but still alive with echoes of its workforce. Many explorers also report sudden cold spots within the plant. Areas such as abandoned control rooms, furnace floors, and stairwells are described as being unnaturally chilly, even on warm days. Visitors often experience shivers or a sudden sense of unease as they move through these areas, sometimes accompanied by the feeling of being watched. These cold spots frequently coincide with other paranormal phenomena, such as shadowy movements or unexplained noises, suggesting a concentration of residual energy from the intense labor and human presence that once filled the plant. Some theorists suggest that the emotional and physical intensity of steelwork heat, exhaustion, danger may have imprinted on the building, creating an environment where the past can still be sensed by the living. One particularly vivid encounter comes from a security guard who was patrolling the plant late at night. Walking through a deserted assembly hall, he noticed a figure in a dark jumpsuit moving along a raised catwalk. The figure appeared to operate a crane, adjusting invisible machinery. The guard reported that as he approached, the apparition stopped, then dissolved into the shadows. Moments later, the distant rumble of machinery echoed through the hall, though no equipment was powered on. He also noticed a sharp drop in temperature, and a faint metallic smell lingered in the air. The guard described the experience as simultaneously terrifying and awe-inspiring, leaving him with the distinct impression that the labor and spirit of past workers still inhabit the plant. Paranormal investigators are drawn to the LTV steel plant due to the consistency and specificity of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured shadowy figures moving along catwalks and through hallways. EMF meters often spike in areas near abandoned machinery and control rooms. Audio devices sometimes pick up hammering, clanging, or voices calling across empty floors. While skeptics argue that the size, acoustics, and decay of the plant can create illusions, the repeated nature of sightings, sounds, and environmental anomalies suggests a deeper, more mysterious presence. The plant's history provides context for these hauntings. Steelworkers endured grueling labor, extreme heat, heavy equipment, and dangerous conditions. Many spent decades within the plant, and some lost their lives on the job. The emotional and physical intensity of their work, combined with the massive infrastructure of the facility, has created an environment where human energy, memory, and possibly spirit continue to linger. The plant's vast, empty halls amplify these sensations, transforming it into a liminal space where past and present meet in ways that can be deeply unsettling. Visitors to the LTV steel plant are advised to explore with caution, respecting both the physical dangers and the spectral reputation of the site. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, cold spots, and unexplained sounds can be disorienting. Those who approach the site with awareness and care often report a powerful sense of connection to the history, labor, and humanity that filled the plant. The LTV steel plant in Cleveland remains a haunting testament to the city's industrial past. Ghostly laborers, machinery that seems to operate of its own accord, and unexplained cold spots transform the abandoned complex into a space where the echoes of human effort endure. For those who wander its vast corridors and deserted halls, the plant is not simply a relic of industrial decline. It is a place where the sweat, toil, and presence of generations continue to whisper, clanging and shifting through shadows and steel. The Ford River Rouge complex in Dearborn, Michigan, is one of the most iconic industrial sites in American history. Conceived by Henry Ford in the early 20th century, the sprawling facility became a marvel of industrial engineering, combining raw material processing, assembly, and shipping into a single, massive complex along the Detroit River. At its peak, the River Rouge complex employed tens of thousands of workers who moved tirelessly through its assembly lines, steel mills, and processing plants. The facility was alive with the roar of machinery, the hiss of presses, the clang of metal, and the constant rhythm of labor that powered Ford's automobile empire. Today, while portions of the plant are still operational or repurposed, many areas remain abandoned, and these silent halls have garnered a reputation for paranormal activity. Visitors frequently recount seeing apparitions of assembly line workers, hearing the echoes of factory whistles when no one is around, and noticing strange shadows moving among abandoned equipment, suggesting that the labor and energy of the past persists in spectral form. One of the most common phenomena reported at the River Rouge complex is the appearance of ghostly assembly line workers. Witnesses describe figures dressed in early 20th century work clothes, often moving with precision along conveyor belts, inspecting machinery, or bending to lift invisible parts. These apparitions sometimes appear in peripheral vision, vanishing when directly observed, leaving only empty aisles and rusted machinery behind. Some visitors report multiple figures moving in unison, as though the assembly line is still in operation, while others see lone workers silently performing tasks that ended decades ago. The realism of these sightings, combined with the faint scent of oil or metal, creates the eerie sensation that the plant is not entirely abandoned, that the echoes of its workforce linger long after the machines have gone quiet. Unexplained sounds are another hallmark of the complex's haunting. Visitors often hear factory whistles blowing, clanging metal, rolling conveyor belts, and distant footfalls echoing through empty halls. Some report hearing indistinct voices calling out instructions, giving warnings, or murmuring to unseen coworkers. These auditory phenomena frequently occur in areas where no power is running and no human presence exists, suggesting that the sounds are not merely the product of acoustics or imagination. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of clanging, pounding, and low rumbling noises that have no identifiable source, along with faint whispers that seem to come from machinery long since decommissioned. The combination of visual and auditory anomalies reinforces the sense of the complex as a liminal space, where past labor, effort, and human presence bleed into the present. Visitors also report seeing strange shadows moving among abandoned equipment. Some describe fleeting forms that dart across aisles or trace the outline of assembly lines, while others see more solid figures pausing near old machinery or catwalks. These shadows often appear in areas that are poorly lit or where sunlight creates stark contrasts. But their movement and timing suggest something more than simple optical illusions. In several accounts, shadows have been seen lingering near specific machines, following the path of the assembly line, or appearing to watch visitors as they navigate the plant. The presence of these unexplained shadows adds an additional layer of unease to the sprawling complex, reinforcing the sense that the River Rouge is more than a historical relic. It is a site imbued with residual human energy. One particularly striking encounter comes from an urban explorer who ventured into an abandoned section of the Rouge complex after dusk. While walking along a former assembly line, he noticed the faint outline of a figure wearing overalls and a cap, bent over a conveyor belt as if assembling car parts. The figure did not respond to the explorer's presence and disappeared when he attempted to approach. Moments later, he heard a distant factory whistle, loud and piercing, echoing through the empty hall. Though no power or human activity could account for it, lights flickered overhead, and a sudden cold draft swept through the area. The explorer described the experience as simultaneously unnerving and awe-inspiring, leaving him with the sense that he had glimpsed the lingering presence of the thousands of workers who had once poured their lives into the complex. Paranormal investigations at the River Rouge complex often focus on the consistency of reports. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting figures moving across catwalks and along conveyor belts. EMF meters sometimes spike near furnaces, machinery, and office areas where workers once supervised production. Audio recorders have documented unexplained clanging, hissing, and the occasional whistle. While skeptics argue that the plant's size, acoustics, and decay can create illusions, the repeated nature of sightings, sounds, and environmental anomalies suggests a more mysterious presence. The history of the River Rouge complex provides context for these hauntings. Workers endured long hours in challenging conditions, managing dangerous equipment, molten metal, and hypershare deadlines. Many spent decades within the facility, dedicating their lives to production, and some lost their lives on the job. The intensity of labor, combined with the enormous scale of the complex, may have left a lasting imprint. The plant's labyrinthian hallways, vast rooms, and towering machinery provide the perfect setting for phenomena that combine history, memory, and the unexplained. Visitors to the River Rouge complex are advised to proceed with caution, respecting both its physical hazards and its haunted reputation. While most reported encounters are non-threatening, the combination of apparitions, strange sounds, and moving shadows can be deeply disorienting. Those who explore with awareness often report a heightened sense of connection to the history, labor, and human effort embedded in the site. The Ford River Rouge complex in Dearborn, Michigan, remains a powerful symbol of American industry and human toil. Apparitions of assembly line workers, echoes of factory whistles when no one is present, and shadows among abandoned equipment transform the facility into a space where history and the supernatural converge. For those who walk its corridors after dark, the complex is more than a relic of manufacturing. It is a place where the labor, energy, and presence of generations of workers continue to whisper through steel shadow and the lingering hum of memory. The Youngstown Sheet and Tube Plant in Youngstown, Ohio, stands as a haunting testament to the city's once thriving steel industry. Established in the late 19th century, the plant became a cornerstone of American manufacturing, producing steel for bridges, buildings, and vehicles across the nation. At its peak, thousands of workers filled the sprawling complex, tending furnaces, operating heavy machinery, and navigating the labyrinthine catwalks and assembly lines that stretched across multiple acres. The plant was alive with the roar of furnaces, the pounding of hammers, the hiss of steam, and the rhythmic hum of industrial activity that never truly ceased. After decades of operation, the decline of the steel industry led to the plant's closure in the 1970s, leaving behind vast halls, towering structures, and abandoned machinery. While the plant now lies mostly in ruins, it has gained a chilling reputation for paranormal activity. Witnesses describe phantom workers appearing on old catwalks, machines starting without power, and the faint sound of voices murmuring across the industrial remains, as if the plant itself continues to echo with the labor of the past. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at Youngstown Sheet and Tube involves sightings of spectral workers. Visitors recount seeing figures in period work, closed overalls, caps, and soot-stained boots moving deliberately along catwalks and through deserted sections of the plant. Some witnesses describe the apparitions performing tasks exactly as they would have decades ago, adjusting controls, inspecting machinery, or bending to lift invisible materials. Others report seeing figures standing silently in the middle of walkways, seemingly watching the plant or observing unseen coworkers. In nearly all cases, these figures vanish when approached, leaving only the rusted remnants of machines and the cold emptiness of the plant. The consistency of these reports suggests that the lingering energy of the workers may remain embedded in the structure, a residue of decades of physical and emotional exertion. Unexplained sounds are another hallmark of the plant's hauntings. Visitors often report hearing the sudden roar of furnaces, the grinding of gears, or the clanging of metal. Even in areas where all power has been shut off for decades, footsteps echo along catwalks and assembly lines where no living person is present. And some witnesses hear muffled voices murmuring instructions or conversing softly with invisible coworkers. Paranormal investigators have captured recordings of metallic clanging, low rumbles, and indistinct whispers that have no discernible source. The combination of these sounds with the visual presence of shadowy figures creates an unsettling atmosphere, suggesting that the plant is not completely abandoned but still resonates with the echoes of its workforce. Cold spots and sudden drops in temperature are frequently reported as well. Certain areas of the plant, such as control rooms, furnace floors, and overhead catwalks, are described as being unnaturally chilly, even in summer. Visitors often experience shivers, a creeping sense of unease, or the feeling of being watched as they move through these zones. These temperature anomalies often coincide with the appearance of apparitions or the onset of strange sounds, reinforcing the sense that residual energy, possibly tied to the intense labor and human presence that once defined the plant. Some theorists propose that the emotional and physical intensity of steel work, combined with the tragedies and hardships endured by the workers, may have imprinted on the building, leaving a lasting spectral presence. One particularly vivid account comes from a photographer who explored the plant at night. While standing beneath a series of catwalks, he noticed a figure in overalls moving along the upper level, bending and gesturing as if adjusting machinery. When he attempted to approach, the figure simply dissolved into shadow, leaving a faint metallic scent in the air. Moments later, he heard the sudden rumble of machinery, as though a conveyor belt or press had come to life. Even though no power was running, the photographer described an overwhelming sense of awe and fear, feeling as if he had glimpsed the enduring spirit of the plant's laborers, who continued to move and work long after the machines had gone silent. Paranormal investigators are drawn to Youngstown sheet and tube due to the consistency and specificity of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured shadowy forms moving along catwalks and across machinery. EMF meters often spike near furnaces, controlled areas, and assembly lines. Audio devices have recorded unexplained hammering, grinding, and voices murmuring across empty sections of the plant. While skeptics suggest that the plant's massive structure, natural acoustics, and decay could create illusions, the repeated nature of sightings, sounds, and environmental anomalies points to a more mysterious presence. The history of the plant helps explain its haunted reputation. Workers endured long hours, extreme temperatures, and the dangers inherent to steel production. Generations spent decades within the facility, performing exhausting labor that required constant vigilance. Many suffered injuries or lost their lives in the line of work. The emotional and physical intensity of the job, combined with the massive scale of the complex, may have left a residual imprint on the structure, creating an environment where echoes of the past remain perceptible to the living. Visitors to Youngstown sheet and tube are advised to exercise caution. While most reported encounters are not threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and cold spots can be disorienting. Those who approach the site with awareness often describe a heightened connection to the human history embedded in the facility. Sensing the dedication, toil, and spirit of workers long gone, today, the Youngstown sheet and tube plant stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a site of chilling hauntings. Phantom workers, machinery starting without power, and whispered voices transform the ruins into a place where the labor, energy, and presence of generations endure. For those who walk its catwalks, wander its corridors, or explore its abandoned halls, the plant is more than a relic of manufacturing history. It is a space where the lives, effort, and spirit of the past continue to move, echo, and whisper through steel and shadow. The Lackawanna Steel Plant in Buffalo, New York, once stood as a towering symbol of American industrial power. Founded in the early 20th century, the sprawling complex produced steel that built bridges, skyscrapers, and railroads, fueling the nation's growth and supporting thousands of jobs in the region. At its height, the plant was a maze of furnaces, warehouses, and assembly lines, alive with the roar of machinery, the hiss of steam, and the rhythmic pounding of metal. Thousands of workers navigated its corridors daily, performing exhausting, dangerous labor under extreme heat and strict deadlines. Over decades, the plant became both a lifeline for the community and a place where countless workers poured their sweat and spirit into every ton of steel produced. But with the decline of the steel industry in the late 20th century, the plant was largely abandoned, leaving behind silent buildings, rusting machinery, and empty warehouses. Today, the Lackawanna Steel Plant has gained a reputation for paranormal activity, with locals reporting shadowy figures, cold drafts, and the eerie sound of machinery echoing through spaces long devoid of human presence. The most common phenomenon reported at the plant involves apparitions of former workers. Visitors frequently describe shadowy figures moving through empty corridors, climbing catwalks, or tending to machinery that no longer functions. Some figures are said to wear soot-stained overalls or caps, moving with the deliberate motions of steelworkers who have performed these actions countless times in life. Many witnesses claim that these figures appear in peripheral vision, vanishing the moment they are observed directly. Others recount seeing workers performing tasks in unison, as though the assembly lines of the past are still in motion, echoing a rhythm that has long ceased. The sense of presence is often overwhelming, leaving visitors with the unnerving impression that the plant itself remembers its past laborers. Unexplained sounds are another hallmark of the Lackawanna Steel Plant's hauntings. Even in areas where all power has been cut and machinery sits cold, visitors report hearing the distant roar of furnaces, clanging of metal, and grinding of old presses. Footsteps echo across hallways and catwalks where no one is present, while muffled voices sometimes seem to call out instructions or warnings from unseen supervisors. Paranormal investigators who have explored the site at night have captured audio recordings containing metallic pounding, hissing, and whispering that cannot be attributed to any natural source. The combination of these sounds with visual sightings creates a powerful sense that the plant is not completely abandoned, that some fragment of its human and industrial past persists in a ghostly echo. Visitors also frequently report sudden drops in temperature. Certain areas of the plant control rooms, furnace floors, and storage warehouses can feel unnaturally cold, even during warm weather. People describe shivers, goosebumps, or the eerie sensation of being watched as they navigate these zones. These cold spots often coincide with sightings of apparitions or the onset of strange sounds, reinforcing the idea that the plant holds residual energy from the intense labor, heat, and human emotion that once filled its halls. Some theorists suggest that the cumulative stress, danger, and toil experienced by steelworkers may have imprinted on the facility, creating a lingering presence that interacts with those who enter. One particularly vivid account comes from a photographer who explored the warehouses at night. While walking along a catwalk, he noticed a figure in overalls moving across a mezzanine, bending over a piece of machinery. The figure remained motionless as the photographer approached, then vanished into the shadows. When he got closer, immediately after, the sound of clanging metal echoed from the far end of the warehouse, though no equipment was operating. A sudden cold draft swept through the space, and the faint smell of iron and oil hung in the air. The photographer described the experience as terrifying yet awe-inspiring, leaving him with a sense that he had witnessed the lingering spirit of the workers who once devoted their lives to the plant. Paranormal investigations of the Lackawanna Steel Plant often focus on the consistency of these encounters. Night vision cameras have recorded fleeting figures moving along catwalks and across machinery. EMF meters frequently spike near furnaces, control rooms, and storage areas. Audio devices capture unexplained clanging, rumbling, and whispered voices. Skeptics argue that the plant's massive structure, combined with natural acoustics and decay, could explain some experiences. Yet the repeated nature of these phenomena across decades suggests something beyond simple environmental effects. The history of the plant sheds light on its reputation for hauntings. Workers endured grueling hours, extreme heat, and dangerous machinery. Some spent decades within its walls, and many suffered injuries or lost their lives on the job. The intensity of the labor, combined with the enormous scale of the facility, may have left an imprint, both physical and metaphysical, on the site. The vast hallways, towering furnaces, and silent machinery create the perfect environment for a lingering presence, where echoes of the past remain perceptible to the living. Visitors exploring the Lackawanna steel plant are advised to exercise caution, respecting both the physical dangers of the abandoned facility and its haunted reputation. While most encounters are not aggressive, the combination of apparitions, strange sounds, and cold spots can be disorienting. Those who approach the plant with awareness often report a profound connection to the human history embedded in the space, sensing the dedication, labor, and spirit of the workers who once filled it. Today, the Lackawanna steel plant stands as both a relic of industrial achievement and a site of chilling haunting. Shadowy figures, cold drafts, and clanging machinery transform the abandoned complex into a place where history and the supernatural converge. For those who wander its corridors, explore its warehouses, or traverse its silent catwalks, the plant is more than a testament to American industry. It is a space where the labor presence and energy of generations continue to echo, moving through steel shadow and memory. The Jones and Laughlin Steel Corporation plant in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was once a bustling center of American industry. Founded in the mid-19th century, it grew into one of the largest steel producers in the country, supplying materials for bridges, ships, railroads, and buildings that shaped the industrial landscape of Pittsburgh and beyond. At its peak, thousands of men and women worked within the sprawling complex, moving through furnaces, rolling mills, and warehouses, their lives consumed by long shifts in the roar of industrial machinery. The plant was alive with the sound of molten steel pouring, presses pounding, and the clatter of hammers and tools echoing through cavernous halls. Workers navigated elevated catwalks, climbed ladders to high platforms, and maneuvered through the labyrinth of machinery with practiced skill. The relentless rhythm of labor defined both the plant and the people who worked there, leaving an indelible mark on the physical space. With the decline of the steel industry in the late 20th century, Jones and Laughlin Steel was gradually shuttered, leaving behind an immense facility of empty halls, silent furnaces, and rusting equipment. Today, while portions of the site have been repurposed or demolished, the plant has earned a reputation as a place of haunting. The story suggests that the energy of the workers, their labor, and the intense human activity that once defined the plant has left a residual imprint on the site, creating an atmosphere thick with history and spectral presence. One of the most frequently reported experiences involves the appearance of ghostly witnesses describe figures dressed in period work uniforms, complete with helmets, gloves, and soot-stained overalls, moving along the floors, catwalks, and staircases of the plant. Some apparitions are seen performing specific tasks, such as checking machinery, bending to lift invisible objects, or pacing along conveyor lines as if monitoring production. Others are described as standing motionless, watching the plant's silent corridors, or seemingly interacting with invisible coworkers. These figures often vanish when approached directly, leaving only the empty space and a lingering sense that the plant is not entirely abandoned. In many accounts, the realism of the apparitions, the way they move, the attention to detail in their attire, and the sense of presence creates a profoundly unsettling experience. Unexplained sounds are a hallmark of Jones and Laughlin Steel's haunting. Visitors report hearing the clanging of metal, hissing steam, the distant roar of furnaces, and the rhythmic pounding of machinery in areas where no equipment operates. Footsteps are often heard echoing across empty hallways and catwalks, accompanied by the occasional muffled voice as if supervisors are calling instructions to unseen workers. Paranormal investigators who have explored the plant at night have recorded metallic bangs, low-frequency rumbles, and faint murmurs that cannot be explained by natural acoustics. These auditory phenomena are often accompanied by a feeling of being watched or followed, enhancing the impression that the labor and energy of the plant's past continue to linger. Visitors also report seeing lights flicker inexplicably throughout the facility. Old overhead lamps, control panels, and machinery sometimes blink or flash even in areas where electrical power has been disconnected for years. Witnesses describe these flickering lights as sporadic and unpredictable, sometimes coinciding with sightings of figures or the onset of unexplained sounds. The lights cast strange shadows across the abandoned machinery and hallways, giving the impression of movement where none exists. The combination of visual, auditory, and atmospheric anomalies reinforces the sense that the Jones and Lachlan Steel plant is a place where the past refuses to stay buried, where memory and energy have taken on a tangible, haunting form. One particularly vivid account comes from an urban explorer who ventured into the plant's abandoned rolling mill at night. As he navigated the rusted catwalks, he noticed a figure in protective gear moving along an upper platform. The figure bent over a machine, adjusting invisible controls, and then paused to glance downward. When the explorer called out, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and a sudden chill in the air. Moments later, a series of overhead lights flickered, bathing the space in an eerie, intermittent glow. The explorer described the experience as deeply unsettling, leaving him with the sensation that he had briefly witnessed the continued presence of the workers who once dedicated their lives to the plant. Paranormal investigations have focused on the consistency and specificity of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting figures moving along catwalks and around machinery. EMF meters frequently spike near furnaces, control rooms, and storage areas. Audio recorders often pick up the sounds of clanging metal, hissing, and indistinct voices, while skeptics attribute some experiences to the plant's vast structure. Natural acoustics and decay. The repeated nature of these phenomena suggests something beyond ordinary explanation. The history of Jones and Lachlan Steel provides context for its spectral reputation. Workers endured long hours in dangerous conditions, operating heavy machinery, molten steel, and high-pressure equipment. Many dedicated decades to the plant, and some lost their lives due to workplace accidents. The intensity of labor, combined with the sheer scale of the facility and the human presence that once animated it. Visitors exploring Jones and Lachlan Steel today are advised to proceed with caution. While most reported encounters are non-threatening, the combination of ghostly figures, phantom footsteps, and flickering lights can be disorienting. Those who enter with respect and awareness often describe a heightened connection to the history and labor of the plant. Sensing the energy and presence of workers long gone, the Jones and Lachlan Steel plant in Pittsburgh stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a site of haunting. Ghostly workers in protective gear, the sound of machinery starting without power, and flickering lights transform the abandoned facility into a place where the echoes of human labor and industrial history converge. For those who walk its corridors, navigate its catwalks, or explore its deserted halls, the plant is more than a relic of steelmaking. It's a space where the energy, dedication, and presence of generations of workers continue to move, whisper, and linger in the shadows. The Horseshoe Industrial Works in Cleveland, Ohio, stands as a silent monument to a bygone era of American manufacturing. Once a sprawling complex of workshops, rail tracks, and assembly areas, the plant was a hub of industrial activity for much of the 20th century. Workers labored long hours, handling heavy machinery, operating presses, and transporting raw materials across the facility. The sounds of metal striking metal, steam hissing from boilers, and the rhythmic rumble of rail carts filled the air day and night. while the heat and grit of industry marked every corner of the sprawling site. Horseshoe Industrial Works was more than a factory. It was a world unto itself, a place where human energy, labor, and endurance left an indelible mark on both the building and the people who worked there. After decades of operation, the decline of American heavy industry led to the plant's closure. Abandoned workshops, rusting machinery, and empty rail tracks became the remnants of a once bustling complex. Yet, for those who venture into its silent halls today, Horseshoe Industrial Works is far from lifeless. Witnesses consistently report paranormal phenomena, suggesting that the energy of the workers and the intensity of the industrial processes have left a lingering, almost tangible presence. Shadowy figures, unexplained machinery movements, and echoing voices create an eerie atmosphere that blurs the line between the living past and the present. One of the most common reports involves shadowy workers appearing along the old rail tracks and inside deserted workshops. Witnesses describe figures dressed in period work, clothes overalls, caps, and soot-stained boots moving deliberately through corridors and along elevated catwalks. Some appear to be performing tasks they once did in life, guiding rail carts, adjusting machinery, or bending to lift unseen materials. Others stand silently, as though watching over the plant, vanishing the moment someone attempts to approach. Many who have encountered these apparitions describe a deep sense of being observed, an almost magnetic pull that draws attention to areas where the shadows linger. The precision and realism of these figures suggest that what remains is more than mere memory. It is a spectral replay of the life that once filled the plant. Auditory phenomena are another hallmark of Horseshoe Industrial Works. Visitors report hearing the unmistakable clatter of machinery, the hiss of steam, and the rhythmic pounding of presses, even in areas where all equipment has long since been decommissioned. Footsteps echo across floors and catwalks, often accompanied by distant murmurs or commands, as if supervisors are directing workers who are no longer present. Paranormal investigators have recorded metallic bangs, low-frequency rumbles, and indistinct whispers in multiple locations throughout the plant. These sounds are often described as chilling, as they seem to emerge from no identifiable source, reinforcing the sensation that the plant is still animated by its past. Machinery operating on its own is one of the most unsettling aspects of the haunting. Witnesses have reported conveyor belts moving briefly, presses cycling without power, and small equipment vibrating or shaking as if guided by unseen hands. While skeptics may attribute some of these occurrences to structural settling or environmental factors, the specificity and timing of these events, often coinciding with the sighting of apparitions or the presence of strange sounds, suggest a more mysterious origin. Many believe that the intense labor, stress, and energy exerted by workers over decades may have imprinted itself on the machinery and the building, creating a residual effect that continues to manifest in the present. One memorable account comes from an urban explorer who ventured into the central workshop at night. While walking along a row of abandoned machines, he noticed a shadowy figure moving along a catwalk overhead. When the explorer called out, the shadow disappeared, but almost immediately, a series of metallic clanging noises echoed from the machines, as if the worker had left them in motion. A sudden cold draft swept through the workshop, and the faint scent of oil and iron filled the air. The explorer described feeling as though he had glimpsed a living memory of the plant, a ghostly continuation of decades of labor that refused to fade entirely. Paranormal investigations at Horseshoe Industrial Works have focused on the consistency and specificity of these experiences. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting figures moving along catwalks and rail tracks. EMF meters frequently spike near OV control panels, boiler rooms, and machinery areas. Audio recorders have picked up clanging metal, low rumbles, and indistinct voices that defy explanation. While some attribute these occurrences to the size of the plant, its acoustics, or natural environmental factors, the repeated nature of the phenomena across decades of reports points to something beyond ordinary explanation. The plant's history provides context for its spectral activity. Workers endured long hours under harsh conditions, handling molten metal, operating heavy machinery, and navigating dangerous rail tracks. Accidents were common, and many spent their entire working lives within the factory walls. The intense physical labor, combined with the human emotion and energy of a densely active workplace, may have left a lasting imprint on the site, creating an environment where echoes of the past remain perceptible to the living. Visitors today are advised to proceed with caution, respecting both the physical hazards of the abandoned complex and its paranormal reputation. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and independently moving machinery can be disorienting. Those who approach with awareness often report a profound connection to the history of the plant, sensing the dedication, energy, and presence of workers long gone. The Horseshoe Industrial Works in Cleveland stands as both a relic of industrial achievement and a site of haunting. Shadowy workers along old rail tracks, voices echoing in empty workshops, and machinery operating on its own transform the abandoned facility into a place where the energy, labor, and presence of generations continue to linger. For those who explore its halls, catwalks, and workshops, the plant is more than a silent industrial ruin. It is a space where the past lives on, moving in shadow, sound, and memory. The Allis-Chalmers plant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, once stood as a sprawling symbol of American industrial innovation. Established in the late 19th century, the facility became a powerhouse of manufacturing, producing heavy machinery, engines, and industrial equipment that fueled industries across the nation. At its height, the plant was alive with a constant hum of activity. Steam hissed from boilers, presses pounded relentlessly, and the rhythmic grinding of gears and conveyor belts echoed through the enormous halls. Engineers, machinists, and laborers moved tirelessly among machines, inspecting engines, adjusting equipment, and ensuring production ran smoothly. The facility was more than a factory. It was a living organism, pulsing with human effort, sweat, and determination. As the decades passed, the decline of American manufacturing led to the closure of large portions of the Allis-Chalmers plant. Machines were abandoned, mid-operation, warehouses emptied, and once bustling corridors fell silent. Yet, those who have ventured into the plant's deserted spaces report experiences that suggests the energy of the past has not entirely faded. Shadowy figures, unexplained noises, and inexplicable cold spots have earned the facility a reputation as one of Milwaukee's most haunted industrial sites. Many locals and urban explorers believe that the spirits of the workers and engineers who dedicated their lives to the plant linger, replaying their routines and guarding the legacy of their labor. Phantom engineers are among the most commonly reported apparitions at Allis. Witnesses describe figures wearing period work clothes, often carrying clipboards or tools, walking deliberately through empty corridors and machinery rooms. Some appear to be inspecting equipment as if the plant were still fully operational, adjusting controls or checking gauges that no longer function. Others are seen moving along catwalks or staircases, vanishing suddenly when approached. Observers frequently note that the figures seem unaware of the living, continuing their tasks as if trapped in a perpetual loop of labor. These encounters create a chilling sense of presence, as though the plant itself remembers the countless hours of work and human effort invested within its walls. Unexplained banging and clanging are recurring phenomena at Allis-Chalmers. Visitors report hearing the metallic hammering of machinery, the rhythmic pounding of presses, and the occasional rumble of conveyor belts, all in areas long abandoned. Footsteps echo across empty halls, often accompanied by the faint murmur of indistinct voices. Some accounts describe doors opening and closing on their own, or tools rattling without any apparent cause. Paranormal investigators who have explored the site at night frequently capture audio recordings containing metallic bangs, low rumbles, and whispers that cannot be attributed to natural causes. The combination of sound, shadow, and sudden temperature changes amplifies the plant's eerie atmosphere, leaving many visitors with the overwhelming impression that the facility is still alive in some spectral form. Shadowy figures walking among rusted equipment are another hallmark of Allis-Chalmers hauntings. These figures are often glimpsed out of the corner of the eye, vanishing when directly observed, yet leaving behind an undeniable sense of movement and presence. In some reports, witnesses describe a cold draft accompanying the appearance of the shadows, as if the residual energy of decades of labor has imprinted itself upon the structure. The combination of visual anomalies, unexplained sounds, and sudden environmental changes creates an immersive, haunting experience that connects the living to the history of the plant. One particularly vivid account comes from a photographer who explored the plant's main assembly hall at night. As he walked along a catwalk, he noticed a figure wearing a helmet and holding a clipboard, moving carefully between idle machines. The figure bent over a piece of equipment as if inspecting it, then paused to glance upward. When the photographer called out, the engineer vanished into thin air, but almost immediately, a series of metallic clanging noises erupted from the nearby machinery. A sudden chill swept through the hall, and a faint smell of oil and iron lingered in the air. The photographer described the experience as unnerving yet awe-inspiring, leaving him with the sense that he had briefly witnessed the living memory of the plant and its workers. Paranormal investigators have documented multiple consistent phenomena throughout the Alzheimer's plant. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving among machinery and catwalks. EMF meters often spike near control panels, furnaces, and workshops. Audio devices record metallic bangs, footsteps, and indistinct voices. While some skeptics argue that these occurrences could be explained by structural settling, environmental factors, or the plant's unique acoustics, the repeated and specific nature of these experiences suggests something beyond ordinary explanation. The history of Alzheimer's provides context for its haunting reputation. Workers endured long hours in dangerous conditions, operating heavy machinery and handling molten metal and industrial materials. Many spent decades inside the plant, while some lost their lives due to workplace accidents. The intense labor, combined with the human energy and emotion invested in the facility, may have left an imprint on the building, creating an environment where echoes of the past remain perceptible to the living. Today, those who explore the Alzheimer's plant are advised to proceed with caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and sudden environmental changes can be disorienting. Many visitors report a profound connection to the history and labor embedded in the facility. Sensing the presence and dedication of workers long gone, the Alzheimer's plant in Milwaukee is both a monument to industrial achievement and a site of haunting. Phantom engineers inspecting machinery, unexplained banging in empty halls, and shadowy figures walking among rusted equipment transform the abandoned facility into a place where history and the supernatural converge. For those who wander its hallways, climb its catwalks, or explore its workshops, the plant is more than a relic of industrial innovation. It is a space where the energy, labor, and presence of generations of workers continue to linger, moving in shadow, sound, and memory. The U.S. Steel plant in Gary, Indiana, stands as a monumental reminder of America's industrial past. Once a sprawling complex of furnaces, assembly lines, and warehouses, the facility was at the heart of the steel industry, producing materials that shaped cities, railways, and the nation's infrastructure. At its peak, thousands of workers moved through its corridors daily, climbing stairwells, inspecting machinery, and maintaining the relentless rhythm of production. The plant was a place of both pride and peril. The roar of furnaces, the pounding of presses, and the constant hiss of steam formed the soundtrack of daily labor, while accidents and near misses were a grim reality of industrial life. The intensity of human effort left an indelible mark on the plant, creating an energy that, decades later, some claim continues to linger. With the decline of the steel industry, U.S. Steel in Gary gradually fell into disuse. Machines were abandoned, mid-operation, assembly lines stood idle, and once crowded corridors became silent. Yet, those who explore the facility report experiences that suggest the plant's history is far from forgotten. Ghostly figures, sudden cold drafts, and unexplained machinery noises have led locals and urban explorers to consider the site one of Indiana's most haunted industrial locations. Witnesses consistently describe encounters that are unsettling yet deeply tied to the facility's history, suggesting that the labor, energy, and tragedies of past workers have left a lasting imprint on the environment. One of the most frequently reported phenomena at U.S. Steel involves ghostly figures climbing stairwells and moving along elevated platforms. Witnesses describe apparitions dressed in period work attire, including hard hats, overalls, and soot-stained clothing, ascending stairs as if responding to urgent instructions or performing inspections. Some figures appear to carry clipboards or tools, pausing at machinery to make adjustments that no longer exist. Others are seen pacing hallways or standing silently at junctions, observing the empty space with a presence that is both eerie and commanding. These figures often vanish when approached, leaving only the sense that the plant itself is aware of intruders, guarding the memory of the labor that once filled its halls. Cold drafts and sudden temperature changes are another hallmark of the haunting at U.S. Steel. Visitors frequently report feeling a sharp chill when entering certain areas of the plant, particularly along assembly floors, stairwells, and near abandoned machinery. These drops in temperature often coincide with sightings of ghostly figures or the onset of unexplained sounds, creating an atmosphere thick with tension and unease. Some explorers describe the sensation of being watched or followed, a subtle pressure that seems to move with them as they navigate the labyrinthine corridors. The combination of visual, tactile, and auditory phenomena creates an immersive experience, reinforcing the impression that the plant is alive in some spectral way. Unexplained machinery noises are among the most unsettling reports. Witnesses recount hearing the rhythmic pounding of presses, the grinding of gears, and the clanging of metal, even when all equipment has long been decommissioned. Footsteps echo across empty floors, sometimes accompanied by faint murmurs or indistinct voices, as if workers are calling instructions or communicating across the plant. Doors, hatches, and drawers have been reported to open and close on their own, while levers and control panels occasionally move without human intervention. Paranormal investigators have documented these occurrences with audio recordings and EMF meters, noting patterns that suggest more than natural settling, wind, or structural acoustics. The persistent nature of these anomalies has convinced many that the echoes of past labor continue to manifest in tangible ways. One memorable account comes from a nighttime exploration of the plant's main assembly hall. A local historian, navigating the catwalks, noticed a figure ascending a metal staircase, carrying what appeared to be a clipboard. The figure paused halfway up, as if inspecting the floor below. When the historian called out, the apparition vanished, but almost immediately, a series of metallic clanging noises erupted from the machinery, followed by a sudden chill that swept across the hall. The historian described a sensation of stepping into a space where time and memory overlapped, feeling as if he had briefly witnessed the continuation of human activity that once defined the plant. Paranormal experts emphasize the consistency of these reports. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along stairwells and assembly floors. EMF meters spike in areas of frequent sightings. Audio devices record metallic clanging, distant machinery sounds, and faint voices, while skeptics argue that the size and acoustics of the plant could explain some experiences. The repeated nature of these phenomena over decades lends credibility to the claims of supernatural activity. The history of U.S. Steel provides context for its haunting. Workers endured long shifts under dangerous conditions, handling molten metal, heavy machinery, and high-pressure equipment. Industrial accidents were common, and many devoted decades to the plant, while some lost their lives on site. The intense labor, the human presence, and the tragedies that occurred may have imprinted themselves on the building, leaving a spectral residue that continues to interact with the living. Today, those who explore US Steel are urged to proceed with caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, cold drafts, and unexplained machinery can be disorienting. Many visitors report a profound sense of connection to the history of the plant, sensing the dedication, effort, and lingering presence of workers long gone. The U.S. steel plant in Gary stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a site of haunting. Ghostly figures climbing stairwells, cold drafts along empty assembly floors, and machinery noises when no one is present transform the facility into a place where history and the supernatural converge. For those who walk its halls, ascend its staircases, or explore its workshops, the plant is more than a relic of steelmaking. It is a space where the labor, energy, and presence of generations continue to move, whisper, and linger in the shadows. The Goodyear tire plant in Akron, Ohio, has long been a symbol of America's industrial might, producing tires that would roll across highways, battlefields, and city streets alike. Established in the early 20th century, the facility was once a sprawling hub of activity. Assembly lines stretched for hundreds of feet. Workers moved with precise coordination, and the air was thick with the combined smells of rubber, chemicals, and heated metal. Day and night, the plant thrummed with life, presses pounding, conveyors humming, and machines spinning relentlessly. Engineers, laborers, and machinists worked side by side, checking molds, adjusting machinery, and ensuring that production never halted. The intensity of human effort, the cacophony of industrial sounds, and the countless hours poured into tire manufacturing left a powerful imprint on the facility, one that, some claim, has lingered long after the machines fell silent. Following decades of operation, portions of the Goodyear plant were shuttered as the tire industry evolved and automation reshaped manufacturing. Abandoned sections of the facility became silent, except for the occasional creak of settling metal and the whisper of the wind through broken windows. Yet those who have ventured into the plant's deserted floors report experiences that defy explanation. Shadowy figures, phantom sounds, and unexplained lights have led many to consider the plant haunted, with the energy and presence of past workers somehow persisting among the machinery and assembly lines. One of the most reported phenomena at Goodyear is the appearance of shadowy workers tending invisible machinery. Witnesses describe figures in period work attire, often wearing overalls, gloves, and caps, moving deliberately along empty assembly lines. These figures appear to inspect equipment, adjust levers, or bend over molds, performing tasks that are no longer required in the abandoned plant. Some seem to move with an almost mechanical precision, as if continuing their daily routines from decades past. Others are seen pacing hallways or climbing staircases to upper platforms, vanishing when approached but leaving behind a palpable sense of presence. Observers often report a combination of awe and unease, feeling as though they are intruding upon a space where time has folded, allowing the past to coexist with the present. Echoing voices are another hallmark of the haunting. Visitors frequently hear faint murmurs, indistinct instructions, or calls echoing across factory floors where no one is present. Some describe hearing the cadence of supervisors giving commands or workers coordinating tasks, as though the plant is still operational but invisible to the living. The voices often seem to come from multiple directions, moving with the observer through corridors and across vast open spaces. Paranormal investigators have recorded these audio phenomena, capturing subtle murmurs, low rumbles, and occasional bursts of indistinct commands that cannot be attributed to acoustics, airflow, or distant traffic. For those who encounter these sounds firsthand, the experience is chilling, creating the impression that the plant remembers its workforce and continues to echo their presence. Unexplained flickering lights add to the eerie atmosphere of Goodyear's abandoned floors. Overhead fixtures, long disconnected from power, are reported to illuminate briefly, casting shadows that dance across walls and machinery. Some witnesses describe lights brightening and dimming in rhythmic patterns, almost as if signaling or tracing the movement of unseen workers. Others notice a single light flaring suddenly as a shadow passes beneath it, then extinguishing just as mysteriously. These phenomena, coupled with the auditory and visual experiences, create a sense that the plant remains semi-alive, caught between the industrial past and the spectral present. A particularly striking account comes from an urban explorer who navigated the plant's main molding floor at night. While moving along a row of dormant presses, he noticed a figure in overalls, bending over a machine that had long been inactive. The worker appeared to adjust levers and check gauges, completely unaware of the explorer's presence. When he called out, the figure vanished instantly. Almost immediately, a low hum and the metallic clanging of machinery echoed through the hall, accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The explorer described feeling as if he had entered a temporal fold, witnessing the continuation of work that had long since ceased but somehow remained imprinted on the building. Paranormal investigators emphasize the consistency of such encounters. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along floors and staircases. EMF meters often spike near old control panels and machinery stations. Audio devices record machinery noises, faint commands, and whispers, while skeptics suggest explanations such as acoustics, building, settling, or imagination. The repeated and specific nature of these experiences over decades suggests the presence of something beyond the ordinary. The haunting is contextualized by the plant's history. Workers endured long hours under intense conditions, handling heavy machinery, molten rubber, and toxic chemicals. Many spent decades inside the factory, while accidents and fatalities were a grim reality of industrial life. The combination of human energy, physical labor, and emotional investment may have left a lasting imprint, creating residual phenomena perceptible to those who enter today. Visitors to Goodyear Tire Plant are advised to exercise caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy workers, disembodied voices, and flickering lights can be disorienting. Many who explore the site report a profound connection to the labor, history, and human presence embedded in the facility, sensing the dedication and lingering presence of those who worked there. The Goodyear Tire Plant in Akron is both a testament to industrial achievement and a place of haunting. Shadowy workers tending invisible machinery, voices echoing through deserted factory floors, and lights flickering without cause transform the abandoned facility into a space where the past and the supernatural converge. For those who walk its floors, climb its stairwells, or explore its assembly lines, the plant is more than an empty industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the labor, presence, and energy of generations continue to echo, move, and linger in shadow and sound. The Pittsburgh Plate Glass Factory in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, once stood as a monumental hub of American industry, producing the glass that would line skyscrapers, storefronts, and homes across the nation. Founded in the late 19th century, the facility expanded rapidly, employing hundreds of workers who toiled among furnaces, presses, and molding equipment to produce sheets of glass with precision and skill. The factory's floors were alive with movement, heat, and sound blowers and rollers shaping molten glass, metal tools clanging against molds, and furnaces glowing with a constant, fiery intensity. Workers navigated the labyrinthian corridors, carrying out tasks that required both strength and meticulous attention to detail, while supervisors monitored production, ensuring every sheet met exacting standards. The human energy that filled the factory was immense, leaving an imprint that, according to witnesses, lingers even today. After decades of operation, changes in the glass industry and economic decline led to the partial closure and eventual abandonment of sections of the Pittsburgh Plate Glass Factory. Machines were left idle, furnaces cooled permanently, and hallways that once rang with orders and clanging metal became silent. Yet, despite the factory's emptiness, locals and urban explorers report phenomena that suggest the past refuses to remain buried. Figures walking among furnaces, ghostly glass-shattering sounds, and shadowy silhouettes in dimly lit corridors have led many to claim that the factory is haunted, its walls retaining the labor, tension, and energy of generations of workers. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves figures moving among abandoned furnaces and machinery. Witnesses describe apparitions wearing period work clothing, overalls, aprons, gloves, and protective hats walking deliberately along production floors, adjusting invisible levers or inspecting equipment that no longer functions. Some figures seem to replicate the precise movements of former glass blowers, bending over molds or carrying unseen sheets of molten glass. Others are observed pacing corridors, disappearing suddenly when approached. The consistency of these sightings has led many to believe that the spirits of the factory's workers continue their routines in a ghostly loop, replaying the labor they once performed with such care and diligence. Glass-shattering sounds are another hallmark of the factory's haunting. Visitors often report hearing the unmistakable crack of glass breaking, the shattering echoing through empty production halls. Some describe it as a single, sharp impact. Others hear a series of brittle cracks, as if multiple panes have fallen or been mishandled. These sounds occur without warning and without any apparent source, leaving explorers startled and on edge. Audio recordings captured by paranormal investigators have confirmed these reports, with sharp, glass-like sounds appearing in otherwise silent areas. The phenomenon is often accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature or a cold draft that sweeps through the hall, reinforcing the impression that something unseen is actively present. Shadowy silhouettes are another recurring feature in the factory. Visitors describe dark figures lingering in dimly lit corridors or standing near old furnaces, their outlines barely visible in the shadows. Some appear to move with intent, following the observer through hallways, while others vanish when directly confronted. A number of witnesses report the unsettling sensation of being watched, feeling eyes upon them even in the absence of any visible presence. These silhouettes are often accompanied by subtle environmental changes, drafts, flickering lights, or distant metallic clangings, suggesting a connection between the apparitions and the residual energy of the factory's industrial past. One striking account comes from a local historian who explored the factory at night. While walking along a row of cold furnaces, he noticed a figure in heavy work clothes bending over a large, invisible mold. The worker's movements were deliberate, precise, and entirely unaware of the historian's presence. When he called out, the figure vanished instantly. Moments later, a loud, shattering noise echoed from a nearby production area, followed by an inexplicable chill that left him shivering. The historian described the experience as surreal, as if he had briefly entered a realm where the past and present overlapped, witnessing the continuation of labor that should have ceased decades ago. Paranormal investigators who have explored the Pittsburgh plate glass factory at night emphasize the consistency of these phenomena. Night vision cameras capture fleeting images of figures moving along corridors and production floors. EMF meters spike near furnaces, storage areas, and stairwells. Audio devices frequently record glass-shattering sounds, distant footsteps, and whispers that defy explanation, while skeptics suggest that acoustics, structural settling, or imagination could account for some experiences. The specificity and repetition of these encounters over years lend credibility to claims of supernatural activity. The factory's history adds weight to its haunting reputation. Workers endured long shifts and high temperatures, handling molten glass, heavy machinery, and volatile chemicals. Accidents and fatalities were a reality, and many spent decades inside the factory's walls. The combination of human labor, stress, and emotional investment may have left a lasting imprint, creating residual energy that persists and interacts with the living today. Visitors to the Pittsburgh plate glass factory are advised to exercise caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, glass-shattering sounds, and sudden environmental changes can be disorienting. Many who explore the facility report a profound connection to the labor and history embedded in the factory. Sensing the presence of workers who dedicated their lives to the craft of glassmaking, the Pittsburgh plate glass factory in Pennsylvania stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a place of haunting. Figures walking among abandoned furnaces, unexplained glass-shattering sounds, and shadowy silhouettes in dim corridors transform the facility into a space where history and the supernatural converge. For those who traverse its floors, climb its stairwells, or explore its darkened workshops, the factory is more than an abandoned industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the labor, dedication, and presence of generations of workers continue to linger in shadow, sound, and energy. The Bethlehem Forge in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, stands as a haunting testament to America's industrial past. A place where iron and steel were once transformed into tools, machinery, and structures that shaped a nation. Established in the 19th century, the forge became a hub of relentless activity, where blacksmiths, laborers, and engineers worked long hours to produce everything from heavy machinery components to structural steel. The air was thick with smoke, heat, and the metallic temps of molten iron, and the rhythmic pounding of hammers on anvils echoed through the vast halls. Sparks flew like fireflies as metal was shaped, bent, and welded, while workers moved with precision across catwalks, platforms, and assembly areas, coordinating in a complex ballet of labor and machinery. The intensity of human effort and the energy of the forge left an indelible mark, one that some claim continues to resonate long after the machines fell silent. After decades of operation, portions of the Bethlehem Forge were decommissioned, leaving abandoned sections of the complex where the roar of furnaces and the clang of metal no longer filled the air. Yet, those who explore the facility report experiences that suggest the past refuses to remain in the past. Shadowy figures, ghostly hammering, and strange apparitions on catwalks have led many to believe that the forge is haunted. A place where the labor, tension, and dedication of workers linger in spectral form. Paranormal investigators and curious urban explorers alike have documented unusual occurrences, drawing connections between the forge's history and the unexplained phenomena reported there. One of the most commonly reported phenomena involves ghostly blacksmiths, seen working along the forge floor or atop elevated catwalks. Witnesses describe figures dressed in period work attire, including heavy aprons, gloves, and caps, moving with deliberate motions as if engaged in their craft. Some appear to hammer unseen metal, adjusting imaginary tools or inspecting invisible machinery. Others wander the catwalks, pausing to peer over rails or glance toward old furnaces, vanishing suddenly when approached. These figures are often observed performing tasks with meticulous attention to detail, as if the energy of their labor is frozen in time but still active, continuing in a spectral loop. Hammering sounds are another hallmark of the Bethlehem Forge's haunting. Visitors frequently report the unmistakable clang of metal striking metal, echoing through empty halls and darkened workshops. The sounds vary from the single, sharp strike of a hammer against an anvil to prolonged sequences of rhythmic pounding, as if a full crew of blacksmiths is at work. These noises often appear with no discernible source, leaving explorers startled and disoriented. Paranormal investigators have recorded these auditory phenomena, capturing hammering, the clatter of tools, and faint footsteps that cannot be explained by acoustics or building settling. Many who experience these sounds report a visceral sense of the forge as past energy manifesting in the present, a bridge between history and the supernatural. Shadowy apparitions drifting along catwalks and elevated walkways are another frequently reported occurrence. Visitors describe dark figures moving silently across metal railings, sometimes pausing to observe the empty factory floor below. Some appear to be supervisors overseeing unseen workers, while others seem to repeat the motions of laborers long gone. Witnesses often experience the sensation of being watched or followed, a pressure that moves with them as they traverse the catwalks. These apparitions are typically accompanied by sudden chills, flickering lights, or unexplained metallic echoes, enhancing the impression that the forge remains alive in some spectral form. A particularly vivid account comes from an urban explorer navigating the main forge floor at night. As he moved beneath an elevated catwalk, he noticed a figure in a leather apron hammering at an invisible anvil. The rhythm of the strikes was precise and deliberate, and the figure seemed entirely unaware of his presence. When the explorer called out, the blacksmith vanished instantly, leaving behind a lingering echo of the hammering and a sudden drop in temperature. Moments later, the faint metallic scent of heated iron seemed to fill the air, as if the forge itself had momentarily come alive. The explorer described a feeling of stepping into the past, witnessing a brief continuation of labor that had long ceased but remained imprinted in the environment. Paranormal investigators emphasize the consistency of these experiences. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along floors and catwalks. EMF meters often spike near old anvils, furnaces, and tool stations. Audio devices record hammering, footsteps, and murmured voices that defy logical explanation, while skeptics suggest environmental factors, structural settling, or imagination could account for some experiences. The repeated nature of these phenomena over decades lends credibility to claims of haunting. The history of the Bethlehem Forge provides context for the reported activity. Workers endured long, grueling hours in dangerous conditions, handling molten metal, heavy tools, and volatile machinery. Accidents were common, and the intensity of the work, coupled with the dedication of generations of laborers, may have left an energetic imprint on the site. The combination of human presence, toil, and emotional investment contributes to the spectral phenomena reported by visitors today. Those who explore the Bethlehem Forge are advised to exercise caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, hammering sounds, and cold drafts can be disorienting and intense. Many who walk the floors, climb the catwalks, or navigate the empty workshops report a profound connection to the history embedded in the building. Sensing the dedication and lingering presence of workers long gone, the Bethlehem Forge in Pennsylvania stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a place of haunting. Ghostly blacksmiths, hammering sounds with no one present, and shadowy apparitions drifting along catwalks transform the facility into a space where the past and the supernatural intersect. For those who traverse its floors, explore its corridors, or walk along its elevated walkways, the forge is more than an abandoned industrial relic. It is a living memory, a site where the labor, energy, and presence of generations continue to echo in shadow sound and chilling ambience. The Midvale Steel Works in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, was once a towering symbol of American industry, producing steel that would form the backbone of bridges, buildings, and railways across the nation. Established in the 19th century, the plant was a sprawling complex of furnaces, rolling mills, and assembly lines, where hundreds of workers toiled under sweltering heat, deafening noise, and the ever-present danger of molten metal. Engineers, machinists, and laborers moved with precise coordination, inspecting machinery, adjusting controls, and maintaining the unceasing rhythm of production. The metallic clang of steel meeting steel, the hiss of steam, and the constant hum of machinery filled every corner of the plant, creating an environment charged with human effort, energy, and determination. For decades, the lives of countless workers were intertwined with the steel they forged, leaving an indelible imprint on the complex. As time passed, parts of Midvale Steelworks were decommissioned and abandoned. Automation, economic shifts, and the decline of domestic steel manufacturing left sections of the facility empty and silent. The once thundering floors now echoed only with the creak of metal, the occasional drip of water, and the distant moan of settling walls. Yet for those who venture into the abandoned sections, the past appears far from gone. Witnesses recount seeing phantom engineers walking along production lines, hearing machinery inexplicably come to life, and feeling sudden, chilling cold spots that seem to trace the original paths of labor. These experiences have contributed to the plant's reputation as a haunted industrial site, where history and the supernatural converge in eerie and unforgettable ways. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves phantom engineers. Visitors describe seeing figures dressed in period work, attire hard hats, protective coats, and gloves moving deliberately along the plant's floors. These apparitions often appear to inspect dormant machinery, adjusting invisible controls, checking gauges, or bending over workstations with meticulous care. Some figures are observed pacing along catwalks or wandering through production corridors, vanishing when approached but leaving an unmistakable sense of presence. Witnesses often describe the figures as moving with intent, performing tasks with the same precision and routine as the living engineers who once managed the plant's operations. The repetition and consistency of these sightings suggest that the energy of labor has somehow become imprinted within the facility itself. Unexplained activation of machinery is another hallmark of the Midvale Steelworks haunting. Visitors frequently report hearing the deep, resonant rumble of furnaces, the rhythmic clanging of rollers, and the hiss of steam in areas long without power. Machines appear to start and stop seemingly at random, with levers and controls moving as if guided by unseen hands. In some cases, observers have felt vibrations beneath their feet, as if the floors themselves were responding to phantom labor. Audio and video recordings captured during explorations have documented these anomalies, with the sounds of steel rolling, clanking, and mechanical operation occurring when no one is present. The experience is often accompanied by an overwhelming sense that the factory remains alive, its machinery continuing to function in the invisible presence of the past. Cold spots along production lines are another frequently reported feature of the haunting. Visitors often describe sudden drops in temperature in localized areas, sometimes accompanied by a tingling sensation on the skin or goosebumps along the arms. These cold zones often align with sections of the plant where workers would have spent extended periods, such as near furnaces, assembly lines, or maintenance platforms. Many who explore the facility note that the cold intensifies in the presence of the phantom engineers, enhancing the feeling that the building is responding to the memory of past labor. The combination of temperature anomalies, visual apparitions, and auditory phenomena creates a powerful, immersive experience, giving visitors the sense of stepping into a world where time and reality overlap. One particularly vivid account comes from an urban explorer who navigated the main rolling mill at night. As he moved along the catwalks, he noticed a figure in a hard hat leaning over a series of dormant machines, seemingly inspecting gauges and adjusting invisible levers. The figure moved with deliberate precision, unaware of the explorer's presence. When he called out, the engineer vanished instantly. Moments later, the deep clanging of rollers echoed through the hall, accompanied by a cold draft that swept across the floor. The explorer described feeling as if he had entered a temporal fold, where the labor and energy of the past continued to resonate in the present. Paranormal investigators emphasize the consistency of these experiences. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures walking along production floors and catwalks. EMF meters often spike near furnaces, control panels, and assembly lines. Audio devices frequently record mechanical noises, footsteps, and murmured voices that defy logical explanation. While skeptics argue that structural settling, acoustics, or imagination could account for some experiences, the repeated nature of these encounters over decades lends weight to claims of supernatural activity. The history of the Midvale Steelworks contextualizes the haunting. Workers endured long hours under extreme heat and risk, handling molten metal, heavy machinery, and complex tools. Accidents were a frequent reality, and the emotional intensity of labor, coupled with generations of dedication, may have left a residual imprint within the building. This energetic residue appears to manifest as phantom engineers, unexplained machinery activation, and sudden cold spots, allowing the past to intersect with the present in tangible ways. Visitors to the Midvale Steelworks are advised to exercise caution. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of apparitions, sudden sounds, and chilling temperatures can be intense and disorienting. Many who explore the facility report a profound connection to the history and energy embedded in the plant, sensing the dedication and presence of workers long gone but still lingering in shadow, sound, and atmosphere. The Midvale Steelworks in Philadelphia stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a site of haunting. Phantom engineers, machinery activating without explanation, and cold spots along production lines transform the abandoned factory into a space where history and the supernatural intersect. For those who traverse its floors, climb its catwalks, or explore its deserted workshops, the plant is more than an industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the labor, energy, and presence of generations continue to echo, resonate, and linger in shadow and sound. The Buffalo Forge in Buffalo, New York, is a sprawling industrial complex that once served as a hub for steel production and heavy manufacturing. Established in the late 19th century, the forge became a bustling center of labor, where workers clad in protective aprons, gloves, and goggles toiled from dawn until dusk. The air was thick with smoke, steam, and the metallic temps of molten metal, while the rhythmic pounding of hammers and the roar of furnaces filled every corner of the facility. Workers moved in precise coordination, operating massive presses, adjusting machinery, and ensuring that production lines ran without interruption. The intensity of human labor and the energy of countless hours spent shaping steel left an imprint on the forge, an imprint that some say persists even today in the form of ghostly activity. As the decades passed, industrial decline led to sections of the Buffalo Forge being abandoned. Massive halls that once echoed with the clatter of machinery now stood silent, their steel beams rusting and floors coated with dust. Yet for those who venture into the deserted portions of the forge, the past seems far from gone. Witnesses report apparitions of workers dressed in period protective gear, machinery inexplicably activating without power, and disembodied voices calling out names in the empty corridors. Paranormal investigators and urban explorers alike have documented these eerie phenomena, noting a consistent pattern of experiences that suggest the forge is haunted by the spirits of its former laborers. One of the most commonly reported occurrences involves ghostly workers in protective aprons. Visitors describe shadowy figures moving along production lines or catwalks, often performing the motions of work with meticulous precision. Some appear to operate machinery that no longer functions, their hands seemingly pressing levers, adjusting controls, or hammering on invisible materials. Others wander through long hallways, pausing to inspect equipment or trace patterns across the floors before vanishing suddenly. These apparitions are often described as moving with intent, as if the energy of labor has been imprinted into the very structure of the forge. Witnesses report feeling a presence, watching them or guiding them through the space, as though the workers are silently continuing their duties in the afterlife. Another hallmark of the haunting is the unexplained activation of machinery. Visitors frequently hear the deep hum of presses, the hiss of steam, and the clanging of metal, all occurring when no one is present. Massive machines rumble to life as if operated by unseen hands. Levers move on their own, and conveyor belts shift despite being disconnected from power sources. Audio recordings captured during explorations have documented these phenomena, with the sounds of machinery echoing through the empty halls and reverberating off the steel walls. Witnesses often report a sense of unease accompanying these occurrences, feeling as though they have entered a space where the past and present coexist in tangible, unsettling ways. Disembodied voices calling worker names are another recurring phenomenon. Visitors often hear faint whispers, sometimes carried on the wind or echoing through empty corridors, calling out names that sound authentic to the period when the forge was operational. The voices are described as both urgent and melancholy, sometimes repeating the same names or phrases in a loop, as if seeking attention or acknowledgement. These auditory experiences are often accompanied by cold drafts, sudden shifts in temperature, or the sensation of being touched lightly on the shoulder or arm. Many who encounter these voices report a profound feeling of connection to the forge's history, as if the workers themselves are reaching out from beyond to remind visitors of the toil and effort that once filled the space. One particularly vivid account comes from an urban explorer navigating the main production floor at night. As he moved beneath an elevated catwalk, he saw a figure in a heavy apron and gloves, bent over an invisible piece of machinery, hammering and adjusting with deliberate care. The figure appeared entirely unaware of the explorer's presence. When he called out, the apparition vanished instantly, leaving behind the faint echo of hammering and a sudden drop in temperature that caused his breath to condense in the chilly air. Moments later, the faint metallic scent of hot steel seemed to fill the room, as if the forge itself had awakened briefly from its long slumber. The explorer described a sense of stepping back in time, witnessing a continuation of labor that should have ended decades earlier, but remained frozen in spectral motion. Paranormal investigators note that these experiences are remarkably consistent across multiple visits. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along floors and catwalks, while EMF meters often spike near furnaces, control panels, and abandoned machinery. Audio devices frequently record mechanical noises and faint murmurs in empty halls, lending credibility to claims of haunting. While skeptics attribute some phenomena to imagination, structural settling, or acoustics, the repeated and corroborated nature of these experiences suggests that the spirits of the forge's past laborers may indeed linger. The history of the Buffalo Forge provides context for the haunting. Workers endured long hours under dangerous conditions, handling molten metal, heavy machinery, and complex tools. Accidents were common, and the emotional intensity of labor, combined with the dedication of generations of employees, may have left a residual imprint within the building. The energy of that human effort, devotion, and fatigue appears to manifest in apparitions, machinery activation, and disembodied voices, allowing the past to reach into the present. Explorers and visitors are advised to exercise caution when navigating the abandoned forge. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of apparitions, unexpected noises, and cold drafts can be overwhelming. Many who walk the halls, climb catwalks, or inspect old machinery report a deep connection to the people who once labored there, sensing their dedication, presence, and persistence long after the forge ceased production. The Buffalo Forge in Buffalo, New York, stands as both a monument to industrial history and a site of haunting. Ghostly workers in protective aprons, machinery starting without explanation, and voices calling names along deserted corridors transform the abandoned plant into a space where history and the supernatural intersect. For those who traverse its floors, walk beneath catwalks, or wander the empty halls, the forge is more than an industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the labor, energy, and presence of generations continue to echo, shimmer, and linger in shadow, sound, and chilling atmosphere. The Youngstown Mills in Youngstown, Ohio, once stood as a powerhouse of American industry, a sprawling complex of steel production and heavy manufacturing that fueled the region's economy for decades. Established in the late 19th century, the mills were home to thousands of workers who spent long hours operating presses, furnaces, and assembly lines. The air was filled with the roar of machinery, the hiss of steam, and the metallic clang of steel striking steel. Workers in protective gear moved with purpose, maintaining the ceaseless rhythm of production while enduring sweltering heat, smoke, and the constant risk of injury. The energy of human labor, combined with the high stakes of the industrial environment, left a lingering imprint on the sprawling complex. An imprint that some claim continues to manifest as paranormal activity long after the mills were abandoned. As the steel industry declined in the late 20th century, sections of the Youngstown Mills were shuttered, leaving enormous halls empty and silent. What was once a hive of activity became a maze of rusting catwalks, dust-coated machinery, and dark corridors. Yet for those who dare to explore these abandoned spaces, the past appears far from gone. Visitors and urban explorers alike have reported ghostly figures moving along the empty floors, unexplained clanging of machinery, and shadowy workers appearing as if to continue tasks that should have ended decades ago. These haunting experiences suggest that the memories of labor, danger, and human presence are somehow embedded within the structure of the mills, lingering as echoes that cross the boundary between the living and the spectral. One of the most frequently reported phenomena involves ghostly workers traversing the mill's empty floors. Visitors describe figures dressed in period work clothes, sometimes seen adjusting invisible machinery, pacing along catwalks, or bending over long-forgotten assembly lines. These apparitions appear purposeful, performing the routines of their labor with remarkable precision. Witnesses often report a sudden awareness of being watched, feeling as though unseen eyes follow them through hallways or along open factory floors. Many describe the apparitions as partially transparent, flickering in and out of view, as if the spirits are caught between two worlds, the life they once knew and the death that now confines them to these abandoned halls. Unexplained clanging and mechanical sounds are another hallmark of the Youngstown Mills haunting. Visitors frequently hear the deep rumble of presses, the clang of steel, and the hiss of steam, all occurring when no machinery is operational. Levers and wheels sometimes move on their own, and conveyor belts shift despite being disconnected from power sources. Some report hearing the unmistakable rhythm of hammers striking metal, echoing across the cavernous halls with no visible cause. Audio recordings captured during explorations have documented these sounds, with machines seemingly coming to life in sections long without power. The experience often produces a disorienting effect, as if the mill's energy, once fueled by human effort and sweat, continues to resonate in an invisible, spectral form. Shadowy figures appear in multiple forms throughout the mills. Visitors have recounted seeing laborers emerge from the darkness, pause to inspect equipment, or walk along catwalks before fading into the shadows. Some apparitions are reported to carry tools, while others seem to move with no visible objects, performing work that no longer has purpose. These figures are often accompanied by a sudden chill, a prickling sensation on the skin, or the sense of being momentarily enveloped by the energy of the past. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena contributes to a haunting that feels tangible, immersive, and deeply connected to the history of human labor within the facility. One vivid account comes from a local urban explorer who entered the mills late at night. Walking beneath a long catwalk, he noticed a figure in a heavy apron bent over an invisible workstation, moving with meticulous care. When he called out, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only the sound of distant clanging echoing through the hall. Moments later, he felt a sudden drop in temperature. The air, heavy with the metallic scent of hot steel, as though the room itself remembered the work once done there. The explorer described this sensation as stepping into a living memory, a space where the energy of the past continued to assert itself in ways both eerie and undeniable. Paranormal investigators have documented numerous experiences consistent with these accounts. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along production floors and catwalks. EMF meters often spike near furnaces, conveyor belts, and machinery platforms. Audio recordings capture the unmistakable sounds of presses, hammers, and muffled voices in empty halls, while skeptics point to acoustics, structural settling, or the power of suggestion as potential explanations. The repeated and corroborated nature of these encounters has convinced many that the Youngstown Mills are indeed a site of significant paranormal activity. The history of the mills provides context for these hauntings. Workers endured long, grueling hours in dangerous conditions, handling molten metal and heavy machinery while exposed to risk, fatigue, and intense noise. Accidents were common, and the emotional weight of labor, combined with the human energy invested over decades, appears to have left a residual imprint within the structure. Apparitions, mechanical anomalies, and ghostly sounds seem to echo the lives and toil of those who once walked the factory floors, suggesting that the essence of their labor continues to exist in a spectral form. Visitors to the Youngstown Mills are advised to exercise caution. While most paranormal encounters are non-threatening, the combination of ghostly figures, unexpected machinery noises, and sudden cold drafts can be overwhelming. Those who explore the facility often leave with a sense of awe and unease, recognizing the deep connection between the place and the people who once labored within it. The Youngstown Mills stand as both a testament to American industrial history and a hauntingly active reminder of the past. Ghostly workers, unexplained clanging, and shadowy figures on empty floors transform the abandoned plant into a space where history, labor, and the supernatural converge. For those who traverse the floors, wander the catwalks, or walk the silent corridors, the mills are more than an abandoned industrial site. They are a living memory, a place where the presence of generations of workers continues to echo, resonate, and linger in shadow, sound, and spectral energy. The Detroit Carriage Works in Detroit, Michigan, was once a bustling hub of craftsmanship, where skilled workers built and repaired carriages that would traverse the streets of the city and beyond. Established in the late 1800s, the facility thrived during the peak of carriage manufacturing, employing dozens of artisans, carpenters, and laborers. The air was thick with the smell of wood, varnish, and horsehair, punctuated by the rhythmic pounding of hammers, the rasp of saws, and the creak of heavy wheels being fitted to polished carriages. Workers moved with purpose, clad in period work, attire-long aprons, caps, and gloves dedicated to their craft. The combination of human labor, skill, and relentless dedication left an imprint on the building, one that persists, according to locals and paranormal enthusiasts. Long after the factory fell silent, as the era of horse-drawn carriages waned and the rise of automobiles overtook the industry, the Detroit carriage works gradually declined. By the mid-20th century, the once thriving factory was abandoned, its corridors echoing with silence, where the noise of labor had once been deafening. Despite years of neglect and decay, those who dare to explore the empty halls report that the past has not entirely faded. Visitors describe ghostly figures moving through the corridors, phantom footsteps reverberating along the creaking floors, and disembodied voices echoing along the long-abandoned passageways. The combination of visual, auditory, and tactile phenomena has made the Detroit Carriage Works a focal point for those interested in haunted industrial sites. Witnesses frequently report seeing apparitions in period work attire. Figures resembling carpenters, wheelwrights, and laborers are often spotted walking the factory floors or standing at long-abandoned workbenches. Some seem to be engaged in the motions of work, bending over benches, adjusting invisible tools, or inspecting materials with meticulous care. Others simply wander through the corridors, moving with a purposeful energy that suggests they are unaware of the passage of time or the presence of modern visitors. These apparitions are often described as semi-transparent, flickering in and out of sight, and sometimes accompanied by a faint, musky scent reminiscent of old wood and varnish. Witnesses often report a sensation of being observed, a feeling that the spirits of the workers continue their duties and silently monitor anyone who enters their domain. Phantom footsteps are another common phenomenon. Visitors frequently hear the sound of boots or shoes pacing across wooden floors, walking along hallways, or climbing staircases. The steps are deliberate, sometimes heavy, other times light, echoing with remarkable clarity despite the absence of any living person. Some explorers have followed the sounds, only to find themselves in empty corridors, with the footsteps ceasing abruptly as if the unseen presence vanished into thin air. The echo of these steps often lingers in multiple locations, creating a disorienting effect, as though the building itself is alive with the movements of the past. Disembodied voices add to the eerie atmosphere. Witnesses report faint murmurs, conversations, or calls along the abandoned halls. Some voices seem to repeat phrases or instructions, reminiscent of a workshop filled with orders and coordination, while others are more personal, calling names that appear authentic to the period when the factory was operational. These auditory phenomena are sometimes accompanied by cold drafts, sudden changes in temperature, or the inexplicable feeling of being touched lightly on the shoulder or arm. Many who encounter these voices describe a chilling sense of connection to the past, as though the spirits are attempting to communicate or remind visitors of the labor and lives once concentrated within the building. One particularly striking account comes from an urban explorer who entered the factory during a winter evening. Walking along the main workshop floor, he noticed a figure in a long apron, bent over an invisible workbench, moving as if shaping a carriage wheel. When he called out, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only the sound of faint hammering echoing through the hall. Moments later, a cold draft swept past, carrying with it the faint aroma of wood shavings and polish. The explorer described the experience as stepping back in time, observing a moment that never truly ended, a scene preserved by the lingering energy of the workers who had once filled the space with life and purpose. Paranormal investigators have documented multiple experiences that align with these accounts. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting images of figures moving along corridors and workshop floors, EMF meters often spike near workstations and staircases, while audio devices record the sound of footsteps, soft voices, and hammering when no one is present. While skeptics argue that structural settling, acoustics, or imagination may explain some phenomena, the consistent and corroborated nature of reports suggests that the Detroit Carriage Works continues to harbor an active haunting. The history of the carriage works helps explain the intensity of these experiences. Workers endured long hours in physically demanding and sometimes dangerous conditions, handling heavy materials, tools, and machinery while producing carriages that were essential to the city's transportation. The combination of human effort, dedication, and occasional tragedy appears to have left a residual imprint within the factory. Apparitions, phantom footsteps, and ghostly voices seem to echo the lives of those who toiled within its walls, allowing their presence to remain even as the building has fallen into disuse. Visitors are advised to exercise caution when exploring the Detroit Carriage Works. While most encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, and sudden chills can be unnerving. Many who walk the halls, inspect old workstations, or traverse the empty corridors leave with a deep sense of connection to the people who once filled the space, recognizing the lingering energy of their labor and presence. Today, the Detroit Carriage Works stands as both a historical landmark and a haunted site. Figures in period attire, phantom footsteps, and echoes of voices transform the abandoned factory into a space where past and present intersect. For those who traverse its corridors, step across the empty workshop floors, or climb its silent staircases, the Carriage Works is more than an industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the lives and labor of generations of workers continue to resonate in shadow, sound, and the spectral energy that remains woven into the building itself. The Akron Rubber Factory in Akron, Ohio, was once a cornerstone of America's industrial might, a sprawling complex dedicated to the production of rubber for tires, industrial equipment, and countless other products that powered the nation. Established in the early 20th century, the factory operated around the clock, with rows of machinery and conveyor belts humming incessantly as workers labored to meet ever-growing demand. The air inside was thick with the scent of heated rubber, chemical resins, and the metallic temps of machinery in constant motion. Laborers, clad in heavy overalls and protective gear, moved with practiced efficiency, tending to presses, rollers, and cutting equipment. The factory's energy, born of human toil, heat, and industry, seems to have left an enduring mark, one that some claim persists in the form of paranormal activity long after the factory was abandoned. As the rubber industry modernized and production shifted to other locations, the Akron Rubber Factory was gradually deserted. The clamor of machinery was replaced by silence, the vibrant energy of workers replaced by empty corridors, rusting equipment, and the occasional whistle of wind through broken windows. Yet those who venture into the abandoned factory often report that the past refuses to stay buried. Witnesses describe shadowy silhouettes flitting through the halls, cold drafts that appear without explanation, and the eerie sound of machinery starting and stopping on its own. These encounters suggest that the energy of the factory, the labor, and the human presence that once defined the space may linger as something more than memoria, haunting of industrial history. One of the most commonly reported phenomena is the appearance of shadowy figures. Visitors have recounted seeing figures dressed in early to mid-20th century work clothes, moving along deserted catwalks or hovering near machinery as if tending to operations long since ceased. These silhouettes are often partially transparent, fading in and out of view, sometimes observed from the corner of the eye and disappearing when approached directly. Some witnesses describe the figures performing repetitive motions, adjusting imaginary levers, monitoring unseen presses, or bending over workstations, suggesting that the spirits are reenacting the work routines they carried out in life. The presence of these figures often evokes a sense of being watched, an uneasy feeling that the factory's history of labor and industry remains actively present in the space. Phantom machinery sounds further add to the unsettling atmosphere. Visitors frequently report hearing the unmistakable rumble of conveyor belts, the deep thud of rubber being pressed, and the sharp hiss of steam or hydraulics, even though all equipment has long been disconnected from power. These sounds often start abruptly and stop just as suddenly, creating a disorienting, almost surreal experience. Audio recordings made during explorations have documented these mechanical noises, capturing the rhythm of presses and rollers operating when no one is present. For some, the factory seems to come alive in these moments. The energy of decades of labor manifesting in auditory echoes that defy logical explanation. Cold drafts and sudden temperature shifts are another hallmark of the Akron rubber factory's haunting. Visitors describe moving through empty hallways or across production floors and feeling icy gusts that seem to come from nowhere. Doors may slam or creak open by themselves, and the temperature can drop several degrees in specific areas, particularly near machinery platforms, stairwells, or storage rooms. Some report the sensation of being brushed lightly, or the feeling of someone passing behind them, only to find no one there. These occurrences combine with visual and auditory phenomena to create a fully immersive experience of the factory as a space that is haunted not only by memory but by active presence. A particularly vivid account comes from a group of urban explorers who entered the factory during a late autumn evening. As they walked down a long corridor lined with dormant presses, one explorer noticed a shadow move along the catwalk above, a figure in a dark jumpsuit pacing with methodical precision. When the group paused to observe, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only the faint sound of rubber being stretched and rolled, echoing through the hall. Moments later, a sudden cold draft swept over them, causing goosebumps to rise across their skin. One explorer remarked that the factory felt alive with the energy of its past workers, as if the building itself remembered the labor, sweat, and effort invested over decades. Paranormal investigators have corroborated many of these experiences. Night vision cameras have captured fleeting silhouettes moving along production floors and staircases. EMF meters spike in areas near old presses and storage rooms. Audio devices frequently record the sounds of clanging, hissing, and machinery in motion. While skeptics argue that structural settling acoustics or the imagination may account for some phenomena, the consistency of reports and the diversity of sensory experiences have convinced many that the Akron Rubber Factory is a site of active paranormal activity. The history of the factory provides context for these hauntings. Workers faced long, grueling shifts, sometimes in dangerous conditions, handling molten rubber, chemical compounds, and heavy machinery. Accidents were not uncommon, and the intensity of labor, combined with human emotion and fatigue, appears to have left a residual imprint on the facility. Shadowy figures, phantom sounds, and sudden cold drafts seem to echo the energy and presence of those who once walked the factory floors, preserving a spectral record of life and labor in the building. Visitors are advised to exercise caution. While most paranormal encounters are non-threatening, the combination of shadowy silhouettes, mechanical sounds, and sudden chills can be unsettling. Those who explore the abandoned corridors often leave with a sense of connection to the workers who once labored there, feeling the lingering presence of history, human effort, and spectral energy. The Akron Rubber Factory remains a haunting reminder of industrial America. Shadowy figures, unexplained machinery sounds, and cold drafts transform the abandoned facility into a space where past and present intersect. For those who step onto its deserted floors or wander through its silent hallways, the factory is more than an abandoned industrial relic. It is a living memory, a place where the labor, life, and energy of generations of workers continue to resonate, echo, and persist in shadow, sound, and spectral presence. Buffalo Steel, once a cornerstone of Buffalo, New York's industrial landscape, stands today as a sprawling, abandoned reminder of the city's steel-making past. At its height, the facility was alive with the roar of furnaces, the hiss of molten metal, and the ceaseless rhythm of hammers and presses shaping raw steel into beams, plates, and machinery. Workers in protective clothing moved with precision through cavernous halls, monitoring operations, tending furnaces, and keeping the massive assembly lines running. The air was thick with heat, smoke, and the scent of iron, while every corner of the plant reverberated with the sounds of heavy industry. Generations of laborers spent their lives inside these walls, and the intensity, danger, and physical demands of the work left an indelible mark on the building itself. With the decline of American manufacturing in the late 20th century, Buffalo Steel gradually ceased operations. Machinery was shut down, offices emptied, and production halls fell silent. Despite the abandonment, locals and explorers report that the plant is far from empty. Many recount paranormal experiences that suggest the labor, energy, and even tragedy of past workers have left lingering impressions within the facility. Shadowy figures, unexplained sounds, flickering lights, and cold drafts are common reports, particularly in the old furnaces, assembly areas, and catwalks of the sprawling complex. One of the most frequent reports involves apparitions of steel. Visitors describe shadowy figures, dressed in protective gear, moving along deserted assembly lines, seemingly carrying out tasks with the same meticulous precision they had in life. Some appear near massive furnaces, adjusting invisible controls or checking non-existent equipment, while others walk through corridors or climb catwalks, vanishing whenever someone approaches. Witnesses often describe the unnerving sensation of being observed, as if the spirits are continuing their work despite the plant's long dormancy. These figures rarely behave aggressively. Instead, they seem locked in the routines of their past labor, an echo of daily life frozen in time. Flickering lights are another signature phenomenon at Buffalo Steel. In many areas of the plant, overhead lamps inexplicably dim, flash, or turn on and off, sometimes in patterns that mimic human movement. Some witnesses report lights following them along catwalks or corridors, illuminating equipment that hasn't worked in decades. In other cases, the flickering occurs in conjunction with phantom machinery sounds, the whir of conveyor belts, the clang of presses, or the hiss of steam valves, creating the impression that the plant momentarily awakens from its long slumber. These experiences blur the line between memory and reality, as though the facility itself is replaying scenes from its industrious past. Mysterious footsteps echoing through empty halls are another common account. Visitors report hearing heavy boots pacing corridors or traversing the catwalks above, their rhythm perfectly synchronized with sounds of phantom machinery. The footsteps often vanish when investigated, only to resume elsewhere, leaving a lingering sense of presence that is difficult to shake. Some explorers describe simultaneous auditory and visual phenomena, seeing a shadow pass near a catwalk while hearing the unmistakable clang of metal on metal, reinforcing the eerie sense that the plant's past workers are still active in spirit. Cold spots and sudden temperature drops further contribute to the plant's haunted atmosphere. Explorers often feel sharp chills near furnaces, along long corridors, or in the high-ceilinged assembly areas. Doors may swing open unexpectedly, and small objects sometimes shift as if moved by unseen hands. The combination of cold, shadows, and sound produces an overwhelming sense of being watched, and many visitors report that the unease lingers long after leaving the site. Accounts from longtime residents add historical context to these experiences. Some describe tragic accidents, injuries, and even fatalities that occurred on the shop floor, events that likely contributed to the intensity of the residual energy within the facility. Others mention the decades of tireless labor, the physical and emotional toll on workers, and the camaraderie that developed in the plant's demanding environment. These elements seem to converge in the haunting, producing apparitions, sounds, and sensations that reflect both the daily routines and the hardships of those who once worked there. Paranormal investigators have documented many of these phenomena. Night vision cameras occasionally capture fleeting images of figures moving along catwalks or assembly lines. Audio devices record footsteps, machinery noises, and faint voices issuing commands or alerts. EMF meters sometimes spike in specific locations, particularly near old control rooms and production wings, while skeptics suggest structural acoustics or imagination may account for some experiences. The consistency and detail of reports over decades indicate that Buffalo Steel continues to carry the imprint of its past. Today, Buffalo Steel stands as more than an abandoned industrial site. It is a haunting testament to a bygone era of American manufacturing, where the spirits of labor and machinery linger. Those who venture into its halls report ghostly figures performing their old routines, flickering lights marking unseen movements, and footsteps echoing through empty spaces. The plant serves as a chilling reminder that the energy of human labor, especially one as intense and hazardous as steelmaking, can leave enduring echoes, whispers of the past that persist long after the workday has ended and long after the plant itself has fallen silent. The Cleveland Foundry in Cleveland, Ohio, stands as a haunting reminder of America's industrial past. Once a bustling hub of metal production, the foundry specialized in casting large steel and iron components for ships, bridges, and industrial machinery. The facility operated 24 hours a day, filled with the roar of furnaces, the clang of molten metal hitting molds, and the ceaseless rhythm of hammers and presses. Workers, engineers, foundrymen, and laborers moved with practiced precision, wearing heavy aprons and protective gear as they navigated catwalks above furnaces, monitored molten flows, and oversaw the relentless machinery that shaped the steel backbone of the nation. The air was thick with heat, smoke, and the acrid temps of molten metal, a sensory imprint that many say lingers even decades after the facility closed. After decades of operation, economic decline, and industrial restructuring led to the foundry's closure. The machines that once roared with life fell silent. Corridors and production floors emptied, and the massive building slowly deteriorated. Yet, for those who explore its abandoned halls, the past seems unwilling to rest. Witnesses report seeing ghostly engineers moving through deserted floors, hearing the clanging of machinery when all power is disconnected, and sensing figures gliding silently across catwalks or disappearing around corners. The haunting seems tied to the human effort and energy that once filled the building, a lingering presence that transcends the decay of brick and steel. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena at the Cleveland Foundry. Explorers and urban historians alike describe engineers and laborers appearing in long coats or aprons, walking with purpose along hallways or across production floors. Some figures are seen bending over invisible machinery, adjusting dials, or inspecting equipment that no longer functions. Others stand silently on catwalks, their forms partially transparent, fading in and out of view, as though the foundry itself is replaying its working days in spectral echoes. The figures often disappear when approached directly, leaving only a feeling of being watched, an intangible presence that lingers long after the sighting. Accompanying these apparitions are mysterious sounds of machinery. Witnesses describe hearing the rhythmic pounding of hammers, the hiss of molten metal, and the clanging of presses and conveyors, even when all equipment is long dormant. These sounds can start suddenly, echoing through cavernous halls, and stop just as abruptly, creating an eerie, disorienting atmosphere. Footsteps often accompany the auditory phenomena, echoing along metal walkways or concrete floors, seemingly following visitors as they traverse the facility. Audio recordings made during explorations have captured these sounds as well, often aligning with moments when shadowy figures are sighted, suggesting a connection between the auditory and visual haunting. Flickering lights and cold drafts add to the unsettling experience. In certain areas, malfunctioning or disconnected lighting systems flash intermittently, casting long, dancing shadows across empty floors. Witnesses report that these lights sometimes reveal the presence of ghostly engineers or laborers, only for the figures to vanish when observers attempt to approach. Sudden drops in temperature often accompany these events, creating icy pockets in hallways or near machinery. Doors may creak or swing open with no wind, and the sensation of being brushed past or followed is frequently described. These combined sensory experiences contribute to the feeling that the Cleveland Foundry is not merely abandoned, but alive with echoes of its past. One particularly vivid account comes from a local historian who explored the main casting floor late in the evening. As he walked past rows of inactive molds, he noticed a figure in a long coat standing at an elevated platform, hands poised over an invisible control panel. When he called out, the figure vanished, leaving behind only the faint sound of metal striking metal and a sudden chill that ran down the historian's spine. Later, as he documented the scene with night vision equipment, faint silhouettes were captured moving across the catwalks, disappearing into shadows moments later. This encounter left the historian with a profound sense that the foundry retained the labor and focus of the engineers who once toiled there. Paranormal investigators have conducted numerous studies of the Cleveland Foundry. Night vision cameras have recorded fleeting images of shadowy figures moving across floors and stairwells. EMF meters often spike near old machinery platforms, and audio equipment frequently captures the sounds of clanging and footsteps without any human presence. While skeptics attribute some phenomena to the building's structural creaks, settling, or the imagination, the consistency of reports over time suggests a lingering energy that cannot be easily explained. The history of the Cleveland Foundry provides context for these hauntings. Workers faced intense pressure, long hours, and the inherent dangers of working with molten metal and heavy equipment. Accidents were not uncommon, and the labor was grueling, physical, and mentally exhausting. It appears that the energy of decades of effort, the focus and tension of workers, and the occasional tragedy may have left an imprint on the building, manifesting today as apparitions, phantom machinery, and strange sensations experienced by visitors. Those who explore the Cleveland Foundry often describe it as more than an abandoned industrial site. The shadowy figures, the sounds of long silent machinery, and the cold, inexplicable drafts make the building feel alive, as if the past refuses to stay silent. Visitors report leaving the site with a profound sense of connection to the laborers and engineers who once filled its halls, experiencing the lingering presence of lives intertwined with the industrial heartbeat of the city. Today, the Cleveland Foundry stands as both a monument to industrial achievement and a haunted space. Ghostly engineers, clanging machinery, and silent figures moving through abandoned floors create an atmosphere where history and the supernatural coexist. For those who walk its empty halls, the foundry is more than a relic of steel and concrete. It is a place where the dedication, energy, and presence of generations of workers continue to resonate, echoing in shadow, sound, and spectral motion long after the last furnace cooled and the final bell rang. The Pittsburgh Wire Works, located in the heart of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, stands as a relic of America's once thriving wire manufacturing industry. Established in the early 20th century, the plant specialized in producing steel wire for bridges, cables, and industrial machinery, employing hundreds of workers who labored around the clock to meet production demands. The sprawling complex consisted of long workshops, towering furnaces, catwalks above assembly lines, and storage areas filled with coils of wire stretching to the ceiling. The air was thick with the smell of hot metal, oil, and dust, punctuated by the constant hum of machinery, the rhythmic pounding of hammers, and the occasional shriek of steam from pressure valves. Workers, clad in protective aprons and gloves, moved with practiced precision, monitoring molten metal, operating wire drawing machines, and performing intricate tasks that demanded both strength and skill. The plant was a hive of activity, but it was also a dangerous place, where accidents were frequent, and the toll of hard labor left a lasting imprint on both the workers and the building itself. After decades of operation, the Pittsburgh Wire Works closed due to industrial decline and the outsourcing of manufacturing. The once bustling workshops fell silent, machinery froze in place, and the corridors became empty shells of their former purpose. Yet, those who explore the plant today report that the past refuses to remain silent. Visitors consistently describe experiences that suggest a lingering presence of the workers who once called the facility home. Shadowy figures, the echo of commands, and cold, oppressive spots create an unsettling atmosphere that makes the abandoned plant feel alive in ways that transcend ordinary experience. One of the most common reports involves ghostly figures moving through the empty workshops. Witnesses described laborers in aprons and protective gear walking along deserted assembly lines, bending over invisible machinery, or climbing catwalks above the floors. Some appear to be engaged in the motions of their old tasks, adjusting levers, checking equipment, or carrying tools that are no longer there. Others stand silently in corners or along passageways, disappearing when approached directly, leaving only a sense of being observed. The figures are often described as faint, almost translucent, yet distinct enough to convey purpose and intent, suggesting that they are echoes of workers frozen in time. Auditory phenomena at Pittsburgh Wireworks are equally compelling. Many visitors report hearing voices repeating old commands and instructions typical of a working factory environment. Phrases such as "keep the line moving," "watch the tension," or "adjust the drawer" echo through empty halls, sometimes overlapping with the sound of phantom footsteps or the rhythmic clang of metal. Machinery sounds, presses starting, wires being drawn, hammers striking, anvils often accompany these voices, even though all electrical power is long disconnected and the equipment sits dormant. Some witnesses note that the footsteps seem to follow them, appearing to cross behind or ahead without any visible source, adding to the sense of unease and making the plant feel populated despite its emptiness. Cold spots are another hallmark of the haunting. Visitors often feel sudden drops in temperature in specific areas, especially near old furnaces, machinery platforms, or along staircases and catwalks. These cold pockets can be intense enough to cause shivers or goosebumps, often occurring in tandem with sightings of shadowy figures or the sound of phantom machinery. Doors may creak or swing open without wind, and unexplained drafts move through the workshops as if carried by unseen hands. The combined visual, auditory, and tactile experiences contributes to a pervasive sense that the building retains a residual energy, the lingering presence of lives devoted to labor, some of which ended abruptly due to accidents. One particularly vivid account comes from an urban explorer who entered the main wire drawing workshop late one evening. As he navigated the narrow aisles between rusted machines, he noticed a figure in a dark apron working at an invisible machine. The figure's movements were precise and deliberate, as if performing a task that demanded absolute focus. When the explorer attempted to speak, the apparition vanished, leaving only the echo of clanging metal and a sudden chill. Moments later, he heard voices repeating instructions that might have been typical in a working plant, along with the faint shuffle of footsteps above on a catwalk. The explorer left with the impression that the plant's former laborers were unwilling to let their routines be forgotten. Paranormal investigators have also documented a range of phenomena at Pittsburgh Wireworks. Night vision cameras capture fleeting images of figures moving through workshops and stairwells. EMF readings often spike near old machinery or along catwalks. And audio recordings capture footsteps, clanging, and voices that seem to repeat commands. While skeptics suggest that some experiences may be explained by building acoustics, structural settling, or heightened imagination, the consistency of these reports across multiple observers points to a haunting that persists beyond simple explanation. The history of the Pittsburgh Wireworks provides insight into the intensity of these phenomena. The plant was a site of relentless labor, physical danger, and occasional tragedy. Many workers spent decades of their lives in the facility, enduring injuries, accidents, and the constant stress of production demands. It seems that the energy, focus, and emotional investment of these individuals left an imprint on the building, manifesting today as shadowy figures, phantom machinery, and the haunting echo of old commands. Today, the Pittsburgh Wireworks is more than an abandoned industrial site. It is a space where the past actively lingers. Visitors report the sensation of being watched, footsteps following their path, and shadowy figures disappearing around corners. The auditory and tactile phenomena make the factory feel alive, a place where the labor, dedication, and sometimes tragic experiences of the past continue to echo through empty halls. For those who walk its workshops and catwalks, the Pittsburgh Wireworks is a chilling reminder that industrial spaces are never truly empty. They carry the presence of those who built and worked within them, resonating in shadow sounds and the cold touch of history that refuses to fade. Gary Steel in Gary, Indiana, stands as a testament to the rise and fall of America's steel industry, a sprawling complex of furnaces, catwalks, and production halls that once churned out tons of steel every day. Established in the early 20th century, the plant employed hundreds of workers who labored long hours in grueling conditions. The floors were lined with massive machinery, conveyors, and molten vats, and the air was thick with heat, smoke, and the metallic temps of freshly forged steel. Workers moved methodically along catwalks above roaring furnaces, operating presses and managing molten flows. Their every action synchronized with the rhythmic pounding of machines and the hissing of steam valves. Despite the efficiency and power of the plant, accidents were common, and the labor exacted a heavy toll on those who worked there, leaving behind a legacy of exhaustion, injury, and, some say, lingering spirits. After decades of operation, Gary Steel faced decline due to industrial outsourcing, changing technology, and economic downturns. The plant eventually shut down, leaving behind vast empty halls filled with rusting machinery, catwalks suspended in shadow, and the echoes of decades of industrial activity. Yet, despite its closure, the plant continues to evoke fear and fascination, as numerous visitors and locals report paranormal activity that suggests the labor and energy of its workers never fully left. Apparitions, mysterious sounds, and cold spots are frequent occurrences, creating a haunting atmosphere that permeates the deserted facility. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena. Witnesses describe ghostly workers moving along catwalks, their forms partially transparent but unmistakably human. Some appear to be performing tasks, adjusting invisible controls, or walking with deliberate purpose through production halls that have long been abandoned. Others stand silently near machinery, as if observing or supervising unseen operations. The figures often vanish when approached directly, but their presence lingers, a silent reminder of the countless hours spent tending furnaces, operating presses, and maintaining the steel-making process. Many visitors report a sense of being watched or followed, even in areas where no figure is visible. Accompanying these visual sightings are unsettling auditory phenomena. Machines that have not functioned for decades are heard starting on their own, with presses pounding, belts rolling, and furnaces hissing as though the plant were still in operation. Phantom footsteps echo through long corridors, sometimes synchronized with the sighting of a figure on a catwalk above. Voices are also reported, shouts, commands, or conversations typical of a working steel plant reverberating through empty halls. Witnesses often describe these sounds as startlingly real, creating the sensation that the plant has briefly returned to its former bustling life, only to vanish as suddenly as it appeared. Cold spots and sudden drafts further enhance the haunting atmosphere. Visitors frequently report sharp drops in temperature along hallways, near machinery platforms, or beneath suspended catwalks. These cold areas can be intense enough to produce goosebumps or a chill running down the spine, particularly when accompanied by the sight of an apparition or the sound of phantom machinery. Doors may creak open or swing shut without wind, and tools or small objects are sometimes found displaced, as if moved by unseen hands. The combination of sensory experiences, sight, sound, and touch creates a profound sense that the energy of the plant's past remains embedded in the building itself. One notable account comes from an urban explorer who entered the plant during late evening hours. Walking along a rusted catwalk above a dormant assembly line, he noticed a figure in protective clothing adjusting controls on a machine that no longer operated. When he called out, the figure vanished instantly, leaving only the echo of metal striking metal and a sudden, inexplicable chill. Moments later, he heard a series of footsteps pacing behind him, accompanied by the low hum of machines coming to life, only to fall silent as he turned. The experience left him shaken, yet certain that the plant's former workers continued to haunt the spaces they once labored in. Paranormal investigators have documented similar phenomena, Night vision cameras capture fleeting images of figures moving along catwalks and stairways. EMF meters often spike near machinery platforms, while audio devices record the sounds of presses, conveyors, and voices repeating commands. While skeptics attribute some of these occurrences to structural settling or imagination, the repeated, consistent nature of the reports suggests a genuine, lingering presence tied to the plant's history. The haunting of Gary Steele is inseparable from its historical context. The plant was not only a site of intense labor, but also of accidents, injuries, and physical strain. Workers devoted decades of their lives to the demanding environment, and some perished in tragic incidents. It appears that the energy, focus, and occasional suffering of these individuals left a residual imprint on the facility. Shadowy figures, phantom sounds, and cold, oppressive spots may be manifestations of this imprint, allowing visitors a glimpse into the intense reality of industrial life in its heyday. Today, Gary Steele remains a place of fascination for those interested in industrial history and the paranormal. The sight of apparitions on catwalks, the sound of machinery operating without power, and the presence of phantom workers moving through rusted halls create a chilling yet compelling experience. Visitors often leave with a heightened awareness of the building's past, the labor it demanded, and the lingering presence of those who dedicated their lives to its operation. The steel plant is not merely abandoned. It is a space where history, energy, and perhaps spirits continue to coexist, echoing through shadow, sound, and the cold air of the deserted halls. For those who walk its vast corridors, Gary Steele is more than a relic of industrial might. It is a haunting testament to the people who built the city's backbone, a place where the past refuses to remain silent, and where the spirits of labor continue to roam the rusted, echoing halls. The Toledo Automotive Plant in Toledo, Ohio, stands as a monument to America's industrial heyday. A sprawling facility, once alive with the rhythm of assembly lines, the hum of machinery, and the ceaseless activity of hundreds of workers. Established in the early 20th century, the plant produced car parts and vehicles that rolled off its assembly lines, contributing to Toledo's reputation as a hub of automotive manufacturing. The factory was a massive complex of high-ceilinged production halls, interconnected corridors, storage areas filled with raw materials, and catwalks that overlooked the machinery below. Workers moved with precision, clad in protective gear, tending presses, welding components, and monitoring conveyor belts that carried incomplete vehicles from one station to the next. The air was thick with oil, metal, and the heat of furnaces, accompanied by the rhythmic clang of metal meeting metal and the hiss of pneumatic tools. Yet, despite the organized efficiency, the plant was a place of danger, where accidents were frequent, and the physical demands of the work left an indelible mark on all who labored there. Over time, industrial decline, outsourcing, and advancements in manufacturing technology led to the gradual closure of the Toledo Automotive Plant. The once bustling halls fell silent. Machinery stopped, and catwalks stood deserted above empty floors. Yet, despite its abandonment, those who venture into the facility report an uncanny sense that the plant has not entirely emptied itself of life. Ghostly figures, unexplained sounds, flickering lights, and sudden drops in temperature create an atmosphere that suggests the workers who devoted decades of their lives to this place have left more than memories. They have left echoes, lingering presences that continue to manifest in unsettling ways. The most frequently reported phenomenon involves ghostly assembly line workers. Visitors describe shadowy figures moving along the old lines, bending over invisible vehicles, or performing tasks with meticulous precision. Some appear to check machinery or carry tools that no longer exist, while others stand silently, seemingly supervising operations that have long ceased. The figures often vanish when approached directly, but their presence is undeniable. Witnesses frequently describe a chilling sensation of being observed, as though the workers are still attending to their duties, ensuring that the work continues even in the absence of a living workforce. Flickering lights are another hallmark of the haunting at the Toledo Automotive Plant. Visitors often see overhead lights dimming or pulsing in isolated sections of the facility, sometimes accompanied by the sudden illumination of long-unused machinery. These lights appear to follow the movements of observers, flickering more intensely as they approach certain areas, such as old welding stations or storage rooms filled with rusting parts. The interplay of shadows and dim light enhances the sense of unreality, making the environment feel alive with activity despite the emptiness of the halls. Some witnesses report that the flickering is synchronized with phantom sounds, such as the hum of conveyor belts or the clanging of tools, further reinforcing the impression that the plant is momentarily restored to its working days. Cold spots and sudden drafts are pervasive throughout the facility. Visitors describe sharp drops in temperature along hallways, near catwalks, and in abandoned production wings, often coinciding with sightings of shadowy figures or the flickering of lights. These cold areas can cause immediate physical reactions, from goosebumps to shivers that crawl up the spine. Doors creak or swing open unexpectedly, and small objects occasionally move without explanation. Some explorers have reported the sensation of breath on their necks, or the fleeting impression of someone walking just behind them, even in areas completely devoid of other people. These occurrences contribute to the chilling ambience, reinforcing the notion that the plant is still haunted by the energy of its former workers. One particularly vivid account comes from a local historian who visited the plant during an evening exploration. As he walked along a deserted assembly line, he noticed a figure in a dark apron moving carefully over an invisible vehicle, checking components as if ensuring everything was correctly aligned. When he called out, the figure vanished, leaving only the echo of metal striking metal and a sudden, inexplicable chill. Moments later, he heard the faint hum of machinery and voices issuing instructions. Phrases like "check the alignment" or "keep the line moving" echoing down the empty corridor. The historian described feeling watched for the remainder of his visit, a sensation that left him certain that the plant's past was far from dormant. Paranormal investigators have documented similar phenomena at the Toledo automotive plant. Night vision cameras capture fleeting images of figures walking among machinery, while audio devices record footsteps, voices, and the sounds of assembly line equipment in areas where no power exists. EMF meters often spike near old production wings, and investigators note that the flickering lights sometimes correspond with areas of high paranormal activity, while skeptics attribute some experiences to structural quirks or imagination. The consistency and frequency of reports suggest that something unusual persists in the plant. The history of the facility provides context for these haunting experiences. The plant was a site of intense labor, physical danger, and occasional tragedy. Workers spent long hours in demanding conditions, many suffering injuries, exhaustion, and even fatal accidents. It appears that the energy, focus, and sometimes trauma of these individuals left an imprint on the facility, manifesting today as ghostly apparitions, flickering lights, and sudden cold spots. The presence of these echoes allows modern visitors a glimpse into the reality of life inside the plant during its operation, where the dedication and toil of generations continue to resonate. Today, the Toledo automotive plant is more than an abandoned industrial site. It is a place where history, labor, and the paranormal intersect. Visitors report the sight of ghostly assembly line workers, the flicker of lights in long-forgotten corridors, and the sensation of cold that seems to follow them from wing to wing. The plant is a reminder that industrial spaces, built and populated by human hands, can retain the energy of those who inhabited them. For those who walk its halls and climb its catwalks, the Toledo automotive plant is a haunting experience, a place where the past refuses to remain silent and where the spirits of labor continue their eternal work, echoing through shadow, sound, and chill. The Cleveland Foundry in Cleveland, Ohio, was once a bustling industrial powerhouse, a facility where molten metal was poured, shaped, and transformed into the components that fueled America's growth. Established in the early 20th century, the foundry specialized in castings for machinery, vehicles, and construction equipment. The building was immense, with high-ceilinged production halls, catwalks suspended above roaring furnaces, and long corridors lined with heavy machinery. The air was thick with smoke, heat, and the metallic temps of molten iron, while the rhythmic pounding of hammers, clanging of presses, and hiss of steam created a constant symphony of industrial activity. Hundreds of workers navigated the cavernous halls daily, clad in protective gear, moving swiftly from one task to the next, tending furnaces, monitoring molten pores, and operating presses. The intensity of the work, coupled with the dangerous conditions, made the foundry both a place of pride and of risk, leaving an indelible mark on those who labored there. Over time, changes in technology, industry, and the economy led to the gradual closure of the Cleveland foundry. Machines were shut down, workers reassigned or laid off, and the once vital production halls fell silent. One wing of the facility, however, remained largely untouched, an abandoned section where rusting equipment and catwalks lingered in the shadows. Frozen in time, though structurally intact, the wing exuded an eerie atmosphere, a sense of lingering energy and unfinished business. Visitors and urban explorers who ventured into this abandoned wing report an array of paranormal experiences that suggest the foundry's past has left more than memories. It has left ghostly imprints of the labor and lives of those who once worked there. Shadowy figures are among the most commonly reported phenomena. Witnesses describe translucent workers moving along the floors, inspecting machinery, or carrying tools that have long since decayed. Some figures appear suspended in mid-motion, as if caught in the middle of pouring molten metal or hammering a casting into place. Others walk along elevated catwalks, silhouetted against the dim light that filters through broken windows, their forms disappearing when approached but leaving an unmistakable impression of human presence. Many who encounter these figures describe a sense of being observed, as though the spirits of the foundry's laborers are still tending to the work they dedicated their lives to. Phantom footsteps frequently accompany these visual sightings. Walkers in the abandoned wing often hear the echo of heavy boots on concrete floors, rhythmic and deliberate, following them down corridors or pacing above on catwalks. These footsteps stop abruptly when confronted directly, only to resume moments later in another area. Some explorers report the footsteps synchronized with faint, metallic sounds, hammers striking, presses clanging, and machinery operating as though the foundry were alive once more. The combination of unseen figures and auditory phenomena creates an immersive haunting that can be both startling and deeply unsettling. Echoes of past machinery are another hallmark of the Cleveland foundry's abandoned wing. Witnesses have heard the rhythmic pounding of presses, the hiss of steam valves, and the low rumble of molten metal moving through channels. Even though all power has been disconnected and no machinery can function, these sounds are often localized, emanating from areas where specific equipment once operated, lending a chilling realism to the experience. Some visitors have even reported faint, indistinct voices, shouts, instructions, and warnings that would have been common in a working foundry. The effect is to recreate a ghostly snapshot of industrial life, as if the facility briefly returns to its operational days, only to vanish moments later, leaving silence and shadows behind. Cold spots and sudden temperature changes further enhance the unsettling atmosphere. Walkers often experience abrupt drops in temperature near machinery platforms, under catwalks, and along corridors. The cold can be intense, producing goosebumps, a shiver running down the spine, or a feeling of breath against the neck. Doors may creak or swing open without wind, and small objects occasionally shift as if moved by invisible hands. These tactile sensations amplify the perception of being observed, reinforcing the sense that the foundry is still haunted by the labor, energy, and even the trauma of its former workers. One particularly vivid account comes from a group of urban explorers who entered the abandoned wing during late evening hours. As they walked through a dimly lit corridor, a shadowy figure appeared at the far end, seemingly adjusting controls on a rusting press. When they called out, the figure dissolved into the shadows, leaving behind the echo of metal striking metal. Moments later, phantom footsteps echoed behind them, and a low hum, resembling the whir of an operational machine, filled the air. The group reported feeling an oppressive weight, a combination of cold and dread, that persisted until they exited the facility. Paranormal investigators have documented similar occurrences. Night vision cameras capture fleeting images of figures moving along catwalks and machinery platforms, while audio devices record footsteps, hammers, and the faint murmur of voices issuing commands. EMF readings often spike in certain areas of the abandoned wings, and investigators note that flickering lights sometimes accompany visual or auditory phenomena, while skeptics argue that these experiences are the product of imagination, structural settling, or acoustics. The repeated and consistent nature of reports lends credibility to the idea that the foundry retains some imprint of its operational past. The haunting of the Cleveland Foundry is inseparable from its historical context. The plant was a site of grueling labor, industrial accidents, and long hours that demanded both skill and endurance. Workers invested years of their lives into the operation of the facility, and some perished in on-site accidents or succumbed to the physical toll of the work. It appears that the intensity, focus, and trauma of these individuals left residual energy behind, manifesting as shadowy figures, phantom footsteps, and echoes of machinery. Today, the abandoned wing of the Cleveland Foundry serves as a chilling reminder of industrial life and its human cost. Visitors report ghostly workers, unexplained footsteps, and echoes of the past that filled the empty halls. The facility is more than a decaying relic. It's a place where history, labor, and the paranormal converge, offering a haunting glimpse into the lives of those who once powered America's industrial engine. The spirits of the foundry, it seems, continue to walk the floors they once labored on, echoing through shadow, sound, and the cold air of the deserted wing. These 25 haunted factories of the Rust Belt remind us that industry leaves a mark beyond steel and concrete. From phantom workers and apparitions among rusted machinery to unexplained noises and flickering lights, the spirits of the past linger in these decaying halls, refusing to be forgotten. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey through America's haunted industrial past. Subscribe, like, and click the bell to continue exploring places where history, horror, and the supernatural collide, and where the machines never truly rest.